The wilderness keeps its secrets buried beneath snow and shadow, but sometimes in the deepest cold, when survival hangs by the thinnest thread, nature reveals connections we never knew existed. What drives a wild Mustang, a creature that has avoided human contact its entire life, to stand guard over a lost child in a deadly blizzard? What ancient memories stir in the blood when eyes meet across the divide between wild and tame? In the mountains of Pine Ridge, where ancient petroglyphs whisper stories of bonds formed centuries ago, a silver mare makes a choice that defies instinct. A young girl faces the storm, lost in swirling white. Two worlds collide in a moment of desperate need. Some say miracles leave tracks in the snow. Others call it the awakening of something primal forgotten in our modern world. Whatever the truth, this story will make you question what we really know about the creatures with whom we share this earth. This is the tale of Silverwind and Chloe, of trust forged in ice and fire, of connections that cannot be explained, only felt. The distant sound of helicopter blades cut through the eerie silence. Swirling snow parted momentarily as the search and rescue chopper dipped lower, its powerful spotlight sweeping across the pristine, white landscape below. The radio crackled with static before a voice broke through, tense with disbelief. "Base, this is Rescue 1. We've found something. You're not going to believe this?" From the cockpit window, Ranger Walter Bishop squinted through specialized binoculars, his weathered face frozen in astonishment. The spotlight had caught two figures in its beam, one small and motionless, partially buried in snow. The other tall and silver, standing guard beside the child's body. "It's a horse!" Walter's voice cracked with emotion. "A wild Mustang, standing over the girl." The helicopter hovered as low as the pilot dared, in the treacherous winds, the downdraft creating a momentary clearing in the blizzard. The silver mare didn't bolt as expected. Instead, she remained steadfast, her body positioned between the approaching aircraft and the small, still form in the snow. No one could have predicted what search teams would discover when they finally reached 9-year-old Chloe Adams after 3 days lost in the deadliest blizzard to hit Valley Forge in decades. Walter whispered to himself, though no one could hear him over the roar of the engines. How did a girl with no wilderness training survive temperatures that dropped to 20 below zero? And what mysterious connection drew this feral animal, known to fear humans, to protect a lost child? The answer lay buried beneath 3 days of impossible survival, unexpected connections and ancient bonds that defied modern understanding. 72 hours earlier, morning sun cast a golden glow over Valley Forge. The small mountain town nestled in the shadow of Pine Ridge was just waking up, its buildings frosted with a light dusting of early winter snow. A weathered wooden sign at the town entrance read, "Valley Forge, American Wild Horse Heritage Area, Eastern 1872. The paint faded, but the pride evident. Judith Campbell's pickup truck rumbled along the country road, its tires crunching over the fresh powder. Inside, 9-year-old Chloe Adams pressed her face against the frosted window, her breath creating small clouds on the glass. Her hazel eyes widened with anticipation as they rounded the final bend toward her grandmother's ranch. "Are we almost there, Grandma?" Chloe asked, brushing her chestnut hair from her eyes. Judy Campbell smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes deepening. At 68, she carried the strength and resilience of a woman who had worked the land her entire life. "Just another mile, sweetie. You can already see the chimney smoke." As they rounded the bend, Judy's ranch came into view, a sprawling property that had been in the family for 3 generations. The white farmhouse stood proudly against the backdrop of towering pines, while the red barn housed the horses Judy had raised since before Chloe was born. "Mom and Dad are still coming tomorrow, right?" Chloe asked, gathering her backpack as the truck pulled into the driveway. "That's the plan," Judy replied, shifting the truck into park. "Your father has that meeting in Denver today, and your mother wanted to finish up at the wildlife clinic before driving up. They'll be here before dinner time tomorrow." Chloe nodded, barely containing her excitement as she jumped from the truck. The moment her boots hit the snow, a border collie came bounding around the corner of the house, barking joyfully. "Sadie?" Chloe knelt down, allowing the dog to smother her with affection. "I missed you too, girl." "Sure." Judy laughed, grabbing their bags from the truck bed. "She's been waiting by the door since sunrise. Somehow that dog always knows when you're coming." Inside the house, the warmth of the fireplace greeted them, along with the scent of freshly baked cookies. Chloe quickly shed her winter coat and made herself at home, as she had done every winter break since she could remember. "Can I go see the horses after lunch?" Chloe asked, already reaching for a cookie. "Sure, but don't go wandering off." Judy hung up her coat and hat. "Weather report says there might be a storm coming in faster than they thought." She paused, looking at her granddaughter with a mix of affection and caution. "And don't overdo it with those cookies." After lunch, Judy led Chloe to the old oak chest in the living room. It sat beneath the window, its wood polished to a soft glow by generations of hands. "I want to show you something special," Judy said, her voice taking on a reverent quality that immediately captured Chloe's attention. She opened the chest, revealing an assortment of family treasures carefully preserved. Photographs in faded frames, handwritten letters tied with ribbon, and small trinkets that told the story of their family history. Judy reached in and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "This, she said, carefully opening the pouch, "is very special to me." From within, she pulled out a silver pendant on a leather cord. It was shaped like a horse in mid-gallop, its mane and tail flowing, as if caught in an eternal wind. The craftsmanship was exquisite, unlike anything Chloe had seen in the tourist shops in town. "It's beautiful," Chloe whispered, reaching out to touch it with a gentle finger. "It was given to me by a dear friend, Elizabeth Redfeather." Judy explained, her eyes distant with memory. "Many years ago, when I was not much older than your mother is now." Chloe looked up with curious eyes. "Who was Elizabeth Redfeather?" A shadow of something hesitation perhaps crossed Judy's face. She was a member of the northern Arapaho tribe. Her family had lived in these mountains for generations before mine arrived. Judy carefully returned the pendant to its pouch. "There are stories connected to this pendant, Chloe. Stories I'll share with you someday." "Why not now?" Chloe asked, her curiosity piqued. Judy smiled softly. "Some stories aren't meant to be told until the right time comes." She tucked the pouch back into the chest, but not before Chloe spotted a faded photograph beneath it. In the brief glimpse she caught, Chloe saw a younger version of her grandmother standing beside a Native American woman. Between them stood a silver horse, its coat catching the sunlight in an almost ethereal glow. "Grandma, is that—" "There are stories that haven't found their moment yet." "Chloe," Judy interrupted, gently closing the chest. "When you're older, perhaps. For now, why don't you go check on the horses? I'm sure Buttercup has missed you terribly." Chloe nodded, recognizing the gentle deflection. Her grandmother had always been somewhat mysterious about certain parts of her past, and Chloe had learned that pushing rarely yielded results. Instead, she pulled on her winter gear and headed toward the barn, Sadie trotting faithfully at her heels. The barn was warm and filled with the comforting smells of hay and horses. Chloe moved from stall to stall, greeting each of her grandmother's horses. They nickered in recognition, some pushing their noses against her hands, looking for treats. "I didn't bring anything today," Chloe apologized to a chestnut gelding. "I'll come back tomorrow with apples, I promise." She saved her favorite for last, an aging palomino named Buttercup, who had taught Chloe to ride when she was just 5. The golden horse's ears perked forward at the sound of Chloe's voice, and she moved to the stall door with the careful steps of an elderly equine. "Hey, beautiful," Chloe whispered, stroking the horse's golden neck. "I've missed you." As she communed with Buttercup, something caught Chloe's attention through the open barn door. A movement along the tree line where her grandmother's property met the edge of Pine Ridge National Forest. Chloe squinted, trying to make out what it was through the gently falling snow. Then she saw it, a horse, but not one of her grandmother's. This one was wild, a Mustang with a coat that seemed to shimmer silver in the winter light. It stood at the edge of the forest as if hesitant to venture further into the open. "Grandma mentioned seeing Mustangs lately," Chloe whispered to Buttercup. "I wonder if that's one of the horses Mom's been tracking." The Mustang's head shot up, ears forward, as if it had heard her voice from across the distance. For a moment it seemed to stare directly at Chloe, and she felt a strange connection, something she couldn't explain, but felt deep in her chest. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the Mustang vanished back into the trees. But not before Chloe spotted a smaller form beside it, a dark gray colt following close behind its mother. Entranced, Chloe left Buttercup's stall and moved to the barn door, staring at the spot where the Mustangs had disappeared. Something about the silver mare's gaze had felt almost knowing, as if the wild horse had been looking for something or someone. Sadie whined softly beside her, sensing Chloe's distraction. "Did you see them, girl?" Chloe asked, patting the border collie's head. They were beautiful. Miles away in a modest ranger station, Walter Bishop stood before a large, topographical map of Pine Ridge National Forest. At 60, Walter had the weathered appearance of a man who had spent his life outdoors. His salt and pepper hair was cropped short beneath the regulation Forest Service hat, and his face bore the lines of someone who had seen both beauty and hardship in equal measure. Walter's calloused finger traced the eastern ridge of the forest where recent Mustang sightings had been reported. As the senior ranger for the district, he had been monitoring the wild horse population for nearly 3 decades. Around his neck, partially hidden by his uniform collar, hung a Native American amulet, a gift from a tribal elder whose son Walter had rescued from a forest fire many years ago. The silver mare was spotted again yesterday. Ranger Lucia Ramirez reported entering the room with a clipboard. At 35, Lucia was Walter's most trusted colleague, her expertise in wildlife biology making her invaluable to their conservation efforts. Harrison's ranch hand saw her leading the herd across the North Meadow. Walter frowned, getting closer to Harrison's property than usual. That won't make him happy. He's already unhappy, Lucia replied, setting down the clipboard. Called this morning demanding the BLM move up the scheduled roundup. Says the Mustangs are competing with his cattle for winter grazing. Walter's frown deepened. The Bureau of Land Management isn't due for assessment until spring. Harrison knows that. He mentioned setting his own traps, Lucia said carefully. I reminded him about the legal implications. Walter sighed, turning back to the map. That man's been carrying a grudge against those horses for 15 years. You'd think time would have softened it. Some wounds don't heal, Lucia observed quietly, especially when you blame yourself. Firm. Walter nodded solemnly. Everyone in Valley Forge knew Scott Harrison's story, how his 10-year-old daughter Emma had died trying to approach a wild Mustang on their property. The horse, startled by the child's approach, had reared. Emma fell, struck her head on a rock, and never regained consciousness. In his grief, Harrison had channeled his pain into a vendetta against the wild Mustangs that roamed the borderlands between the national forest and private properties. I'll ride out tomorrow, check the boundary markers, Walter decided, and have a word with Harrison about those traps. Last thing we need is injured wildlife with a storm coming. Through the station window, Walter could see snow beginning to fall more heavily. His eyes drifted to the ridge where the Mustang herd was known to roam. Something about this approaching storm felt different, unsettling, like the quiet before an avalanche. She's out there, he murmured almost to himself. Who? Lucia asked, looking up from her reports. Silver Wind, Walter replied, using the name locals had given the mare who led the Mustang herd. Watching, waiting. He touched the amulet at his neck briefly. Some animals see more than we give them credit for. Lucia gave him a curious look, but didn't comment on the uncharacteristic mysticism from her typically pragmatic superior. Instead, she returned to her reports, leaving Walter to his thoughts and the falling snow beyond the window. That evening, as Chloe and her grandmother sat by the fire after dinner, Chloe finally brought up what she had seen. I saw a Mustang today at the edge of the forest, she said, curling her legs beneath her on the couch. It was beautiful, almost silver. Judy looked up from her knitting, her expression carefully neutral. That sounds like the mare Scott Harrison's been complaining about. Been leading her herd onto his grazing land. Scott Harrison, the man with the big ranch on the other side of the forest? That's him. He's been pushing for the Bureau of Land Management to round up those Mustangs. Says they're competing with his cattle for grass. Judy's expression darkened. Your mother's been fighting him on it. Mom didn't tell me about that, Chloe said, frowning. She didn't want to worry you. Judy set her knitting aside. But that silver mare folks around here call her Silver Wind. She's special. Been evading capture for years. Smart as they come. Chloe stared into the fire, thinking, why can't they just leave the Mustangs alone? It's their home too. It's complicated, sweetie. Land use, water rights, grazing permits. Judy sighed. But your mother's doing everything she can. She knows those horses better than anyone. Has she seen Silver Wind up close? Chloe asked. A shadow passed over Judy's face. Your mother had an encounter with Silver Wind once, about 2 years ago. She hesitated as if weighing how much to share. Catherine was tracking the herd for her research when she found Silver Wind separated from the others. She was in labor, but something was wrong. Chloe's eyes widened. What happened? The foal was breech coming out wrong way around. Your mother made a difficult decision. She interfered, broke every protocol they have for observing wild animals. She helped deliver the foal. Judy's voice softened with pride. Silver Wind was too exhausted to flee, and Catherine, she touched her, helped her. The foal survived. Arrow, Chloe whispered, remembering the dark colt she'd seen. Judy looked surprised. Yes, that's what your mother named him in her notes. I've never seen him myself. He was with Silver Wind today, Chloe explained. Darker gray than his mother. Your mother's kept her distance since then, observed only from afar. But sometimes, Judy paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes, she says, when she's tracking the herd, Silver Wind looks directly at her. Not with fear, but with something else. Recognition, maybe. The fire crackled in the hearth as Chloe absorbed this information. Outside, the snow was falling more heavily now, the wind beginning to pick up. Judy glanced out the window with concern. That storm's coming in faster than predicted, she murmured. I'd better call your parents to see if they should delay their trip tomorrow. As Judy went to make the call, Chloe remained by the fire, thinking about the silver mare and her colt, about her mother's secret intervention and the connection that might have formed. Something about it resonated with her, like a half-remembered dream or a story waiting to be told. Outside, the wind howled, the first harbinger of the blizzard that would soon engulf Valley Forge in white. Scott Harrison stood at the window of his study, watching the snow swirl across his expansive property. At 55, he carried himself with the rigid posture of a man who had learned to contain his emotions rather than express them. His weathered face rarely smiled these days, though. If one looked closely at old photographs in the ranch house, they would see he hadn't always been so stern. On his desk sat a framed photograph of a smiling girl with pigtails and missing front teeth, sitting proudly atop a gentle bay pony. Emma, his only child, gone 15 years, yet the pain remained as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. Behind the photo lay a stack of property maps and legal documents, his latest petition to the Bureau of Land Management for Mustang removal from the territories bordering his ranch. 3 rejections so far, each citing insufficient evidence of grazing competition and the conservation status of the wild horses. The telephone rang, breaking his reverie. Harrison picked it up, his voice gruff. Harrison. Mr. Harrison, it's Jake Matthews. Just following up on those traps you mentioned setting. Deputy Jake Matthews was new to the Valley Forge Sheriff's Department, young and by the book. Harrison suppressed a sigh. What about them, Deputy? Sir, I need to remind you that trapping wild horses without proper authorization is a violation of the Wild Free-Roaming Horses and Burros Act. If you're having issues with Mustangs on your property, there are legal channels. I know the law, Matthews, Harrison interrupted. These are humane enclosure traps. Catch and hold, no harm done, and they're on my property where I have every right to protect my livelihood. There was a pause on the line. Mr. Harrison, with the storm coming in. I appreciate your concern, Deputy. Harrison cut in again, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. You have a good evening now. He hung up before Matthews could respond, turning back to the window. The snow was coming down heavier now, visibility decreasing by the minute. Good. Let the storm come. Maybe it would drive those Mustangs south, away from his land, away from the memories they stirred every time he caught a glimpse of their wild freedom. His gaze drifted to the desk drawer where he kept the accident report from that terrible day. He didn't need to open it. Every detail was seared into his memory. Emma, always headstrong, had slipped away during a roundup. She'd spotted a Mustang near the property line, a young mare, curious but cautious. Everyone warned her to stay away from the wild horses, but Emma had been convinced she had a special way with animals. Harrison closed his eyes against the memory of what happened next. The startled horse, the rear, the fall, the rock, the guilt. If only he'd been watching more closely. If only he'd built that fence sooner. If only he'd never told her stories about how her great-grandfather had gentled wild Mustangs with nothing but patience and apples. Opening his eyes, Harrison reached for his coat. The traps wouldn't check themselves, and the storm was getting worse. Best to make sure they were secure that nothing would be suffering unnecessarily in the coming blizzard. Even if part of him still believed that suffering was the only language the world truly understood. The next morning dawned gray and heavy with the promise of snow. The weather forecast had changed overnight. The storm was coming sooner and stronger than expected. Judy paced the kitchen phone pressed to her ear, concern etched on her face. "Catherine, I think you and Benjamin should wait until the storm passes," she said, glancing out the window at the thickening snowfall. "The roads are already getting bad." She listened to her daughter's response, shaking her head. "Yes, I know you want to be here, but—" Judy sighed. "All right, but promise me you'll turn back if it gets worse." Hanging up, she turned to find Chloe watching her from the doorway, already dressed in her winter clothes. "Your parents are still coming, but they might be later than planned," Judy explained. "The storm's picking up faster than the meteorologist predicted." "Can I go outside before it gets bad?" Chloe asked. "Just to the barn. Does stoppin'." Judy looked uncertain, casting another glance at the increasingly heavy snowfall. "Only to the barn, Chloe. This storm's coming in fast. I need to secure a few things around the property, so I'll be out there too. Be back inside in half an hour, okay?" Chloe nodded solemnly. "I promise." With Sadie trotting beside her, Chloe made her way to the barn. The sky had darkened considerably since breakfast, and fat snowflakes had begun to fall in earnest. The wind cut through her coat, making her pull it tighter around herself. Inside the barn, she checked on the horses, making sure they were comfortable for the coming storm. Buttercup nickered softly as Chloe stroked her nose, the old mare's eyes gentle with recognition. "There's a big storm coming," Chloe told her, "but you'll be safe in here." As she finished her rounds, she noticed Sadie standing at the barn door, ears perked toward the forest. The border collie's posture was alert-focused. "What is it, girl?" Chloe joined the dog, peering out. There at the edge of the trees again stood the silver mare. This time she wasn't alone. Arrow stood beside her, his coat a darker gray than his mother's. They seemed agitated, moving nervously along the tree line. "It's okay," Chloe whispered, though she knew they couldn't hear her. "The storm will pass." But something was wrong. The mare kept looking back into the forest, then to her colt as if torn between two paths. Suddenly Arrow bolted, disappearing into the trees. Silver Wind called after him a desperate whinny that carried across the open space between them. Without thinking, Chloe stepped out of the barn. "Chloe, time to come in!" Her grandmother's voice called from somewhere around the house, barely audible over the rising wind. "I'll be right there," Chloe called back, her eyes still fixed on the forest edge. Silver Wind had vanished after her colt. Sadie whined beside her, sensing her inner conflict. "We'll just take a quick look, Sadie. Make sure they're okay." Even as the words left her mouth, Chloe knew her grandmother would disapprove, but something pulled her toward the tree's concern for the colt curiosity about the mare, or something deeper she couldn't name. "Stay, Sadie. Go back to Grandma." Chloe pointed toward the house, and the reluctant border collie hesitated before turning back, looking over her shoulder with concerned eyes. Taking a deep breath, Chloe stepped toward the forest line. The snow was falling heavier now, the wind picking up strength. She would just go a little way in, see if she could spot the mare and colt, then hurry back before her grandmother noticed. As she entered the shelter of the trees, the sounds of the world seemed to shift. The wind whistled through branches, creating an eerie melody. Snowflakes danced between trunks and undergrowth, creating a disorienting curtain of white. Chloe followed what looked like hoof prints in the fresh snow, moving deeper into the forest than she had intended. "Hello," she called softly. "Where are you?" The forest answered only with the creaking of branches and the hush of falling snow. The hoof prints continued, and Chloe followed, losing track of time as the storm intensified around her. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, she realized two terrible truths. She had no idea how far she had come, and she could no longer see the way back to the ranch. The snow was falling so thickly now that visibility had reduced to mere feet. Panic rose in her throat as she turned in a circle, trying to orient herself. Every direction looked the same, Endless trees and swirling white. Grandma, she called, her voice small against the vastness of the forest. Sadie. Only the wind answered, howling between the trees like a living thing. Chloe hugged herself, fighting back tears. She needed to find shelter to wait out the worst of the storm. Her grandmother would come looking for her. She just needed to stay safe until then. As the temperature dropped and the daylight began to fade, Chloe stumbled forward, desperate to find something, anything that might offer protection from the elements. The cold was seeping through her clothes, numbing her fingers and toes despite her winter gear. "Help!" she called again, her voice cracking. "Please, someone!" Then through the curtain of snow, she saw movement, a large shape drawing closer. For a moment, hope surged through her. Her grandmother must have found her. But as the figure emerged from the whiteout conditions, Chloe's breath caught in her throat. Standing before her, not 20 feet away, was Silver Wind. Snowflakes clung to her mane and eyelashes, but her gaze was steady, fixed on Chloe, with an intensity that made the girl freeze in place. This was a wild animal, unpredictable and potentially dangerous. "I am lost," Chloe whispered, though she knew the horse couldn't understand. "I was looking for you and your baby." The mare snorted, her breath clouding in the frigid air. She pawed at the ground once, then took a step closer. Chloe remained still, afraid to make any sudden movements. Silver Wind approached cautiously, nostrils flaring as she caught Chloe's scent. When they were just a few feet apart, the mare stopped. She turned her head, slightly looking back the way she had come, then back to Chloe. She repeated the motion, then took a few steps in that direction before stopping to look back at the girl. "You want me to follow you?" Chloe asked incredulously. As if in answer, the mare took a few more steps, then paused again, waiting. With few options and the cold becoming unbearable, Chloe made a decision. "Okay," she whispered. "Lead the way." As the blizzard engulfed the forest in white, Chloe followed Silver Wind deeper into Pine Ridge, unaware that back at the ranch, her grandmother had just realized she was missing, and the first frantic calls to emergency services were being made. By morning, Valley Forge would be mobilizing the largest search operation the town had ever seen. But would it be enough to find one small girl in a vast wilderness transformed by the storm of the century? Judy Campbell stood in her kitchen phone, clutched so tightly in her hand that her knuckles had turned white. Outside, the storm had intensified to a full-blown blizzard, snow driven horizontally by howling winds that rattled the windows of the old farmhouse. "Yes, she went to the barn about an hour ago," Judy explained, her voice strained with fear. "When I went to check on her, she wasn't there. Sadie, her dog, came back alone, which isn't like her at all." On the other end of the line, Deputy Jake Matthews was taking notes, his young voice trying to project calm professionalism. "And you've checked all the outbuildings of the house attic. Any places she might go to play or hide? Everywhere." Judy confirmed, her free hand absently stroking Sadie's head. The border collie whined anxiously, sensing her owner's distress. "I've been calling for her, but with this wind," she trailed off, the implication clear. "No one could hear calls for help in this weather." "I'm dispatching units to your location now, Mrs. Campbell," Matthews assured her. "And I'm contacting Ranger Bishop at the Forest Service. If she wandered into the woods—" He didn't finish the thought. "Her parents are on their way," Judy said, more to herself than to Matthews. "They should have been here already, but the roads—" "Mrs. Campbell, I need you to stay inside where it's safe," Matthews instructed. "Leave a light on in case Chloe finds her way back. We'll have search teams at your property as soon as road conditions allow." After hanging up, Judy moved to the window, staring out at the wall of white that had engulfed her property. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the silver horse pendant that hung around her neck, the one she had shown Chloe just yesterday. "Elizabeth," she whispered to the storm, "if you're out there somewhere watching over these mountains like you always said, please keep her safe." In the howling wind, there was no answer, only the relentless snow and the growing darkness as night fell over Valley Forge. Deep in the forest, Chloe struggled to keep pace with Silver Wind. The mare moved with confident steps despite the blinding snow, occasionally looking back to ensure the girl was still following. The cold had become a living thing, seeping through Chloe's layers of clothing, numbing her extremities first, then working its way inward. Each breath felt like inhaling shards of ice. Her legs had grown heavy, movements sluggish, and a dangerous drowsiness tugged at the edges of her consciousness. She had heard enough of her father's wilderness survival stories to know what that meant. Hypothermia, the silent killer of the winter woods. I can't keep going, Chloe gasped, stumbling to her knees in a snowdrift. Silverwind stopped immediately, turning back. The mare approached, nudging Chloe's shoulder with her nose, the gesture almost chiding. Get up. Keep moving. Just need to rest, Chloe murmured, her eyelids growing heavy. The mare's response was immediate and startling. She pawed the ground inches from Chloe's legs, spraying snow into the girl's face. The shock of it roused Chloe from her dangerous lethargy. Okay, she said, struggling back to her feet. I'm coming. They continued through the deepening twilight, the forest growing darker around them. Just when Chloe felt she couldn't take another step, Silverwind led her into a small clearing. There, nestled against a rocky hillside, was the dark mouth of a cave. Without hesitation, the mare walked directly into the cave entrance. Chloe followed, relief washing over her as she escaped the cutting wind. The temperature inside, while still frigid, was noticeably warmer than the open forest. The cave wasn't large, perhaps 20 feet deep and 15 feet wide, but it offered solid protection from the elements. The floor was littered with dry leaves and pine needles that had blown in over time. In the dim light filtering through the entrance, Chloe could make out the rough stone walls and low ceiling. Thank you, she whispered to Silverwind, who stood watching her with those intelligent eyes. Are you looking for Arrow too? The mare's ears twitched at the sound of her voice, but she remained near the entrance, occasionally turning to check the storm outside. With trembling hands, Chloe gathered the dry leaves into a pile, creating a makeshift bed for insulation from the cold stone. As she worked, Silverwind watched her gaze, following Chloe's movements. When the girl had finished, she curled up on the leaf pile, drawing her knees to her chest to conserve body heat. She was so cold, so tired. Despite the danger, her eyelids grew heavy. Don't sleep, she muttered to herself, knowing that surrendering to exhaustion in these temperatures could be fatal. Stay awake. A soft sound made her open her eyes. Silverwind had moved from her position at the entrance and now stood directly over her. Before Chloe could react, the horse carefully lowered herself to the ground beside the girl, her large body curling slightly around Chloe's small form. Chloe held her breath, afraid to move. The mare's body radiated heat-living warmth that began to seep into Chloe's frozen limbs. Gradually, the girl's shivering subsided. Silverwind's rhythmic breathing created a soothing cadence in the darkness. You're keeping me warm, Chloe whispered in wonder. But why are you helping me? The mare made no response except to shift slightly closer. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside the cave, an improbable peace had settled between girl and mare. As warmth slowly returned to her body, Chloe's mind drifted to the stories her grandmother had begun to share about Elizabeth Redfeather, about her mother's encounter with Silverwind, about connections that defied explanation. Just before sleep claimed her, Chloe's hand found the rough stone wall of the cave. Her fingers traced over something carved into the rock, lines and curves that felt intentional, not natural. Too tired to investigate further, she let her hand drop, unaware that her fingers had brushed across ancient petroglyphs depicting humans and horses together, watching over the same mountains, the same valleys for countless generations. At the ranger station, organized chaos reigned. Walter Bishop stood before the wall-size map, placing red pins to mark areas already searched. Around him, rangers, sheriffs, deputies, and volunteer search and rescue teams coordinated their efforts. Radio communications crackling through the room. This storm's worse than anything I've seen in 20 years, Walter said, his weathered face creased with concern. Visibility's near zero, temperatures dropping by the hour. Lucia Ramirez nodded, adjusting her radio. The forecast says it won't let up until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. The door burst open, bringing a gust of snow and wind, along with Deputy Jake Matthews. He stomped his boots on the mat, shaking ice from his uniform. Any word from the Eastern Quadrant? Walter asked. Jake removed his hat, revealing worried eyes. Nothing yet. We've got 4 teams out, but they can't go more than half a mile from the access roads in these conditions. What about the grandmother? How's she holding up? Lucia asked, pinning another search zone to the map. She's tough but terrified. Blames herself for not watching more closely. Jake warmed his hands by the heater. The parents just arrived. Nearly crashed twice getting here through the storm. They're at the house now. Walter's radio crackled to life. Bishop, do you copy? This is Fletcher. Go ahead, Travis, Walter responded immediately. We found tracks heading east from the Campbell property, but the storm's covering them fast. Looks like small boot prints consistent with a child. They disappear about a quarter-mile in. Walter exchanged glances with Lucia. That's something at least. Any sign of where they might lead, negative. But there's something else. Larger tracks alongside them. Looks like a horse. One of Mrs. Campbell's horses got loose, Jake suggested. Doesn't look like it, Travis replied through the static. These aren't shod. I think they might be Mustang tracks. A heavy silence fell over the room. Walter was the first to break it. Travis, mark that location and get back to base. It's too dangerous to continue in the dark. He turned to Lucia and Jake. First light, we concentrate our search eastward from those tracks. If she followed a Mustang into the woods, he didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone knew what it meant. A child alone in these temperatures wouldn't survive the night without shelter, and following a wild horse could have led her miles into the wilderness. I'll inform the family, Jake said, his voice grim. They should prepare for a long search once the storm breaks. As the deputy left, Walter moved to the window, staring out at the impenetrable wall of white. He touched the amulet at his neck, a habit he'd developed over the years when faced with situations beyond his control. A Mustang, he murmured. Not just any Mustang, I'd wager. Lucia joined him at the window. You're thinking of Silver Wind. Walter nodded slowly. There's something about that mare. In all my years tracking these herds, I've never seen a Mustang quite like her. He hesitated, then added quietly, Catherine Adams mentioned once that Silver Wind seemed to recognize her after she helped with the foaling. You don't think, Lucia began, then stopped herself, the suggestion too improbable to voice. I don't know what to think, Walter admitted, but right now that girl's only hope might be something beyond our understanding. Outside, the blizzard raged on transforming Pine Ridge National Forest into an unrecognizable landscape of white. In the Campbell living room, Catherine Adams paced before the fireplace, her face pale with fear and exhaustion. At 42, she carried herself with the confident poise of a woman accustomed to field work in emergency situations. But this was different. This was her daughter. How could this happen? She asked for what seemed like the 100th time. She knows better than to wander off, especially with a storm coming. Benjamin Adams sat at the kitchen table, staring at the map spread before him. At 45, he still had the rugged build of his ranching youth, though he'd traded that life for conservation advocacy years ago. His dark hair was peppered with premature gray, more noticeable now in the strain of the moment. The Rangers are doing everything they can, Kate, but in these conditions... Don't, Catherine cut him off. Don't even say it. She's alive. Our daughter is alive, and we're going to find her. Judy stood by the window looking out at the wall of white that had engulfed her property. Sadie lay at her feet, whining occasionally, as if sensing the family's distress. She was heading toward the barn, Judy said quietly. That's the last time I saw her. Sadie came back alone, which isn't like her. She never leaves Chloe's side. Catherine joined her mother at the window, and the Rangers found tracks leading east from the property into the Mustang territories. Benjamin looked up sharply. The Mustangs. You don't think the volunteer... Travis said there were horse tracks alongside Chloe's, Judy confirmed. Unshod hooves. Catherine's expression shifted, a glimmer of something not quite hope, but possibility in her eyes. Silver Wind. Chloe mentioned seeing her yesterday. A wild Mustang wouldn't help a lost child, Benjamin said gently. Kate, you know better than anyone how they avoid humans. Catherine shook her head. Silver Wind is different. In all my years studying the herd, I've never encountered a horse with such intelligence, such awareness. She hesitated. And there's something else. What is it? Judy pressed. Last spring when I was tracking the herd, I found Silver Wind separated from the others. She was in labor, but something was wrong. The foal was britch. Benjamin stood up. You never told me this. I didn't tell anyone. I interfered. Broke every protocol we have. Catherine's voice grew quiet. I helped deliver the foal. Silver Wind was too exhausted to flee, and I I touched her, helped her. The foal survived. Arrow, Judy said suddenly. The dark colt. Catherine nodded. That's what I named him in my notes. I've kept my distance since then, observed only from afar. But sometimes when I'm tracking the herd, Silverwind looks directly at me. Not with fear, but with something else. Recognition, maybe. A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the howling wind outside. You think she recognized Chloe? Benjamin asked finally, his tone skeptical. As your daughter, I don't know, Catherine admitted. It sounds crazy, but animals have senses we don't understand. And if Chloe is with Silverwind, Judy finished, then she has a chance. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Benjamin opened it to find Deputy Jake Matthews Snow covering his uniform despite the short walk from his vehicle. Any news? Catherine asked immediately. Jake shook his head. The search teams have had to return to base. Conditions are too dangerous to continue until morning. Morning? Catherine's voice rose. That's 9 hours away. Chloe can't. Mrs. Adams. Jake interrupted gently. I understand your fear, but right now sending people out there would only result in more lives at risk. The temperatures have dropped to 15 below, with the wind chill. Visibility is 0. So we just sit here and wait, Benjamin demanded. We prepare, Jake corrected. Ranger Bishop asked me to get more information about the Mustang herd, particularly the silver mare your mother-in-law mentioned. Any details about their movements, territories, habits, anything that might help us narrow the search area when we can resume at first light. Catherine took a deep breath, visibly pulling herself together. I have maps tracking data. My research materials are in my car. As she moved toward the door, Judy caught her arm. Kate, there's something else you should know. Scott Harrison was at the general store when I was in town yesterday. He was talking about setting up traps for the Mustangs. Said he was tired of waiting for the BLM to do their job. Catherine froze. What kind of traps? The kind meant to capture, not kill. But in this weather, the implications hung in the air. If Chloe was with Silverwind, they might not be the only ones in danger out there. In the forest cave, Chloe had fallen into an uneasy sleep, her body warmed by the mare's presence. She dreamed of home, of her grandmother's kitchen, of her parents' arms around her. In her dreams, the cold couldn't touch her. She woke suddenly, unsure what had disturbed her. Silverwind was still beside her, but the horse's head was up, ears pricked forward in alert attention. A low rumble sounded from the animal's chest, not quite a whinny, but a warning. What is it? Chloe whispered now, fully awake. What's wrong? Silverwind rose to her feet in one fluid motion, moving to the cave entrance. Outside, the storm had abated slightly, the wind no longer howling quite so fiercely. In the dim light filtering through the clouds, Chloe could make out the mare's tense posture, the way she pawed at the ground nervously. Something was out there. Chloe struggled to her feet, her body stiff from cold and inactivity. She joined Silverwind at the entrance, peering into the swirling snow. At first, she saw nothing. Then a movement caught her eye, a shadow moving between the trees, low to the ground and purposeful. Another shadow joined the first, then a third. Chloe's breath caught in her throat as understanding dawned. Wolves. Silverwind positioned herself between Chloe and the predators, her body language clear, a warning, a challenge. One of the wolves crept closer, testing the mare's resolve. With startling speed, Silverwind lashed out with her front hooves, narrowly missing the wolf's head. The wolf retreated but didn't leave. The pack was hungry, and in these conditions, any prey was worth the risk. They won't leave, Chloe whispered, fear making her voice shake. We're trapped. Silverwind turned her head slightly, as if considering the girl's words. Then, to Chloe's astonishment, she nudged the girl back toward the depths of the cave before returning to her defensive position. Understanding dawned on Chloe. The mare wanted her to hide, to move deeper into the cave where the wolves couldn't reach her. But that would leave Silverwind alone against the pack. I won't leave you, Chloe said, standing her ground. We have to scare them away together. She remembered something her father had taught her once during a camping trip, predators fear fire. The cave floor still held some dry leaves and twigs. If she could create a flame... Chloe frantically searched her pockets. She'd been wearing her winter coat, the one with the emergency kit her mother insisted she carry. Her numb fingers closed around the small waterproof container in her inside pocket. Inside were matches designed to light even in wet conditions. Working quickly, Chloe gathered more dry material, piling it near the cave entrance. Her hands shook as she struck a match, praying it would catch. The first match failed, extinguished by the damp. The second flared briefly before dying. Outside, the wolves were growing bolder. One darted forward, snapping at the mare's legs. Silver Wind kicked violently, connecting with the wolf's shoulder and sending it tumbling back with a yelp. "Please," Chloe whispered, striking the third match. This time the flame held. She touched it to the driest leaves, which caught immediately. She added more fuel, and within moments a small fire blazed, casting flickering light and much-needed warmth. Chloe grabbed a burning branch and moved toward the cave entrance, standing beside Silver Wind. Together they faced the wolves, the girl waving her makeshift torch, the mare pawing threateningly at the ground. The wolves hesitated, their instinctive fear of fire warring with their hunger. For a long moment, predator and prey stood in a tense standoff. Then reluctantly the wolves began to retreat, disappearing one by one into the snowy darkness. Chloe sagged with relief, her small body shaking with adrenaline and cold. Silver Wind turned to her, nudging the girl gently back toward the fire, as if understanding what had just transpired. The horse seemed to be acknowledging their partnership. "We did it," Chloe whispered, wrapping her arms around the mare's strong neck in a moment of pure gratitude. To her surprise, Silver Wind didn't pull away. Instead, the wild horse stood patiently, allowing the human child this brief contact. As Chloe fed more fuel to the fire, she noticed again the markings on the cave wall that she had felt earlier. In the flickering firelight, she could now see them clearly, ancient petroglyphs carved into the stone. Horses and humans depicted together in simple lines and curves. Some showed people riding, others showed them standing side by side. One particular image caught her attention, a figure that appeared to be a child standing beside a horse with flowing mane and tail. Between them was a spiral symbol that Chloe didn't recognize. "Look," she said softly to Silver Wind, pointing at the carving. "It's like us." The mare glanced at the wall, then back at Chloe, her gaze inscrutable. The fire wouldn't last long with their limited fuel, but for now it provided crucial warmth and a circle of safety in the vast frozen wilderness. Chloe settled back down, and after a moment's hesitation, Silver Wind joined her, once again offering her body heat to the child. As the night deepened around them, an unlikely bond continued to strengthen a wild Mustang and a human girl survivors together in a hostile world. "We'll be okay," Chloe murmured, her small hand resting against the mare's warm flank. "Someone will find us tomorrow, and I'll make sure they don't hurt you or take you away. I promise." Outside, the blizzard continued its assault on the forest, burying the landscape under feet of snow. Dawn was still hours away, and with it the massive search that would resume for the missing child. But for now, in their small cave sanctuary, Chloe and Silver Wind had found something unexpected, a connection that transcended the natural boundaries between wild and tame, a shared will to survive that had united them against the elements and other dangers of the wild. And somewhere in the forest, Silver Wind's Colt arrow was still missing another piece of the puzzle that would draw this unlikely pair even deeper into their shared journey. When morning finally came, the first hint of dawn crept over the mountains, painting the snow-covered forest in pale gold light. The storm had weakened overnight, though heavy snow still fell in silent sheets. At Cedar Ridge Station, Walter Bishop methodically checked his equipment, radio, first aid kit, emergency blankets, GPS unit. 28 years as a ranger had taught him to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. "Teams are assembled and ready," Lucia announced, entering the room with a stack of topographical maps. Her usual composure was strained by lack of sleep and growing concern. "We've got 14 volunteers plus the 4 rangers from Elkton Station." Walter nodded grimly. "We'll divide into 6 search parties." The Adams woman provided detailed maps of the Mustang herd's territories. "If the girl followed that silver mare, these are the most likely areas." He indicated several circled regions on the map. The door opened, letting in a blast of cold air as Travis Fletcher entered, stomping snow from his boots. His face was haggard from the sleepless night. "Trail cameras picked up something at the eastern boundary," he said without preamble. "2 hours ago." Walter and Lucia looked up sharply. "The Mustang?" Lucia asked. Travis shook his head. "Wolves, a pack of 5 moving south along the ridge." Walter's expression darkened. "That changes our calculation. We need to prioritize that sector." He turned to Lucia. Radio the other teams. We move out in 10 minutes. As the Rangers prepared to depart, a pickup truck pulled into the station's lot. Catherine and Benjamin Adams emerged bundled against the cold. "We're coming with you," Catherine announced as she entered, her voice leaving no room for argument. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, but her jaw was set with determination. "Mrs. Adams, I understand how you feel, but—" Walter began. "No one knows those Mustangs like I do," Catherine interrupted. "And no one knows my daughter better than us." She spread a detailed map on the table. "I've been tracking Silver Wind's herd for 3 years. There are 5 locations where they consistently seek shelter during storms." Benjamin stepped forward. "We've brought extra supplies. We won't slow you down." Walter studied them for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. "You'll come with my team, but you follow orders without question. This isn't just about finding Chloe anymore. With wolves in the area, we're racing against time." As the teams dispersed to their vehicles, Travis approached Walter privately. "There's something else. Harrison called in this morning, said some of his traps were triggered overnight." Walter swore under his breath. "Where?" "Northwest quadrant near Boulder Canyon. He's headed out to check them now." "Radio Deputy Matthews. Have him meet Harrison and make sure he understands this is a rescue operation first. Those traps could be dangerous to a child." Travis nodded and moved away to make the call. Walter turned to find Catherine watching him, her expression tense. "What traps?" she demanded. Walter hesitated, then decided honesty was necessary. "Scott Harrison set traps for the Mustangs before the storm hit. Cage traps, he claims. But in these conditions, they could be lethal." Catherine finished, her face going pale. "We need to find her now." In the cave, Chloe woke to the soft nicker of Silver Wind. The fire had died hours ago, leaving only cold ashes. Outside, the blizzard had weakened to steady snowfall. Silver Wind stood at the cave entrance, her attention fixed on something outside. "What is it?" Chloe asked, her voice rough from the dry, cold air. She struggled to her feet, her limbs stiff and painful. "Is it the wolves again?" The mare turned to look at her, then back outside. The behavior seemed deliberate, communicative. Chloe joined her at the entrance, squinting into the brightening day. The snow had transformed the forest into an alien landscape, smooth white drifts bearing familiar landmarks. But it was beautiful in a cold, silent way. "We should try to find help," Chloe said, though the prospect of venturing out into that vast whiteness terrified her. "People will be looking for me." Her stomach growled painfully, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since lunch the previous day. Thirst burned her throat. She knew from her father's wilderness lessons that she could eat clean snow for hydration, but food would be impossible to find. Silver Wind seemed to have made a decision. The mare stepped out of the cave, then looked back expectantly at Chloe. After their shared night facing the wolves, a trusted formed between them. Chloe no longer questioned whether to follow. "Okay," she said, pulling her coat tighter. "I'm coming." Moving through the deep snow was exhausting. Chloe struggled to keep up as Silver Wind forged a path ahead, sometimes disappearing from view entirely. The mare seemed to be following a specific route, occasionally stopping to wait for the girl to catch up. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, they reached a small clearing. Silver Wind stopped pawing at the snow beneath a cluster of pine trees. Curious, Chloe approached. The mare had uncovered a patch of ground where the snow was thinner, revealing winter berries still clinging to low bushes. "Food!" Chloe exclaimed, dropping to her knees. She recognized the berries from her mother's lessons, winter greens safe to eat and surprisingly sweet. She gathered handfuls, the tart juice exploding in her mouth, easing her parched throat. "How did you know these were here?" she asked the mare, who stood watching her with those intelligent eyes. As Chloe ate, something occurred to her. Wild horses didn't eat berries, they grazed on grasses, bark, and twigs in winter. Silver Wind hadn't led her here for her own benefit, but specifically to help Chloe find food. When she had eaten her fill, Chloe rose to her feet. "Thank you," she said simply, reaching out to touch the mare's neck. Silver Wind allowed the contact briefly before moving away. The mare's next destination was a small stream partially frozen, but still flowing beneath a thin sheet of ice. Again she waited as Chloe broke through the ice to drink the cold, clear water. With her immediate needs addressed, Chloe felt strength returning. The sun had risen fully now, filtering through the pine branches and reflecting blindingly off the snow. She knew search parties would be looking for her, but in this vast wilderness, how would they ever find her? My mom will be so worried, she said aloud. And Grandma Judy, they must be looking everywhere. Silverwind's ears suddenly pricked forward, her body tensing. Before Chloe could react, the mare bolted across the clearing, disappearing into the trees. Wait! Chloe called, panic rising in her chest. Don't leave me! She rushed after the mare's tracks, fighting through snow that reached her knees in places. Silverwind moved with purpose, following a trail only she could sense. When Chloe finally caught up, she froze at the sight before her. In a small dell surrounded by snow-laden pines stood a metal cage, a trap. Inside, pacing nervously, was a young colt with a dark gray coat. Arrow, Silverwind's baby. The mare circled the trap, nickering softly to her foal, who responded with frightened whinnies. Oh no, Chloe whispered. The trap was clearly meant for Mustangs, a box-like structure with a spring-loaded door that had snapped shut behind the curious young horse. Chloe approached cautiously, examining the mechanism. It was simple but effective, impossible for an animal to open. Don't worry, she told Silverwind, who watched her with cautious hope. I can open this. The latch required human hands to manipulate, but it wasn't locked, just secured with a heavy pin that needed to be removed. Chloe worked quickly, her cold fingers struggling with the metal parts. Finally, the pin came free. Stand back, she warned the mare, pulling the door open. The colt hesitated only briefly before bolting from the cage, rushing to his mother's side. Their reunion was touching. Silverwind, nuzzling her baby, checking him over for injuries while Arrow pressed against her flank, seeking reassurance. Chloe smiled through tears she hadn't realized were falling. You were looking for him all along, weren't you? That's why you were acting so strange at the edge of the forest. The family moment was interrupted by a distant sound, an engine. Someone was approaching on a snowmobile. Chloe's heart leapt. Rescue. But Silverwind had a different reaction. The mare herded her colt away from the sound, clearly alarmed. Wait, Chloe called. It might be people looking for me. But something about the mare's fear gave her pause. If these were rangers or her family searching, why would Silverwind be so frightened? The answer came in the form of a man on a snowmobile cresting a nearby ridge. Even at a distance, Chloe recognized him from town. Scott Harrison, the rancher her grandmother had mentioned, the man who wanted the Mustangs removed. Harrison spotted the open trap immediately, then the horses retreating into the trees. His gaze finally landed on Chloe, standing alone by the empty cage. Even from a distance, his shock was evident. Hey, he shouted, gunning the engine toward her. Kid, what are you doing out here? Chloe froze, unsure whether to run or stay. The decision was made for her as the snowmobile rapidly closed the distance between them. Harrison cut the engine, staring at her in disbelief. You're the Campbell girl, aren't you? The one everyone's looking for. Chloe nodded, suddenly wary. I got lost in the storm. Harrison looked from her to the open trap, understanding dawning on his weathered face. Did you let that colt out? He was trapped, Chloe said defensively. He would have frozen or starved. That trap is on my land for my purposes, Harrison said, his voice hardening. Those wild horses are destroying my grazing grounds. They were here first, Chloe countered, surprising herself with her boldness. This is their home too. Harrison's expression softened slightly. Look, kid, I'm not the bad guy here, but right now we need to get you back to safety. There's a major search operation underway. Your family's worried sick. He extended a hand toward her. Come on, my snowmobile can get us back to the main road in 20 minutes. Chloe hesitated, looking toward the trees where Silverwind and Arrow had disappeared. What about the horses? What about them? They're wild animals, not pets. The mare saved my life, Chloe insisted. She found shelter for me, kept me warm. She even showed me where to find food this morning. Harrison's expression was skeptical. Kid, you've been through a traumatic experience. Your mind's playing tricks. It's not, Chloe interrupted. Silverwind protected me all night. We fought off wolves together. For Silverwind, that what you call her, Harrison shook his head. That mare's been leading my men on a chase for 3 years. Cost me thousands in lost grazing. A crackle of static interrupted them as Harrison's radio came to life. Harrison, this is Deputy Matthews. What's your position over? Harrison unclipped the radio from his belt. I'm in the northwest quadrant checking my traps, and you're not going to believe this. I found the Campbell girl. The radio erupted with excited voices, questions overlapping. Harrison raised his hand toward Chloe. Hang on, folks. She's alive and looks unharmed. I'm bringing her in now. As he returned the radio to his belt, a sound from the trees caught their attention. Silverwind had reappeared standing at the forest's edge watching them intently. Arrow was nowhere to be seen, presumably hidden safely deeper in the woods. Well, I'll be damned, Harrison muttered. She really did stay with you. Chloe took a step toward the mare. She's special. My mom helped her once when Arrow was being born. I think she remembered somehow. Harrison's brow furrowed. Your mother interfered with a wild birth? She saved Arrow's life, and now Silverwind saved mine. Chloe turned to face the rancher fully. Please don't hurt them. Don't trap them. For a long moment, Harrison stared at the girl, then at the proud mare watching from the tree line. Something in his expression shifted. Let's get you home first, he said finally. Then we can talk about the Mustangs. As Chloe reluctantly climbed onto the snowmobile behind Harrison, she looked back at Silverwind one last time. The mare remained at the forest edge, her silver coat gleaming in the winter sunlight, a wild sentinel bidding farewell to her human charge. Thank you, Chloe whispered, though the mare couldn't possibly hear her over the snowmobile's engine. I won't forget you. As Harrison navigated through the snow-covered landscape, Chloe held on tight, her mind racing. She knew this wasn't the end of her connection with Silverwind. Somehow, some way, she would make sure the Mustangs remained free and protected. She owed the silver mare that much and more. Several miles away, Walter Bishop's team had picked up the radio transmission. Catherine's face transformed with relief and joy. She's alive, she whispered, tears streaming freely now. My baby's alive. Benjamin held his wife tightly, his own eyes wet. Harrison found her. I can't believe it. Walter was already redirecting their vehicle. We'll meet them at the main forest road. ETA 20 minutes. Lucia radioed the other search teams with the news. Across the snow-covered wilderness, weary searchers celebrated their exhaustion, forgotten in the joy of a successful rescue. But as they converged on the meeting point, none of them, not the parents, not the rangers, not even Scott Harrison himself, fully understood what had really happened in the forest. None of them could comprehend the depth of the bond that had formed between a lost child and a wild mare, a connection that defied natural instincts and bridged two worlds. That story, the true story, would only emerge in the days to come, and it would change everything for the people of Valley Forge and the wild Mustangs of Pine Ridge Forest. The snowmobile broke through the tree line onto the main forest road, where 3 vehicles waited: ranger trucks and an ambulance, their emergency lights painting the snow in flashes of red and blue. As Harrison slowed to a stop, Catherine Adams rushed forward, her face transformed by desperate relief. Chloe! She cried, reaching for her daughter as Harrison helped the girl dismount. Mom! Chloe fell into her mother's arms, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotion. Catherine enveloped her, sobbing, while Benjamin joined the embrace, his strong arms encircling them both. You're freezing, Catherine murmured quickly, assessing her daughter with a professional eye despite her tears. We need to get you warmed up. Walter Bishop approached, his weathered face softened with relief. Let's get her checked out in the ambulance, he suggested, gently guiding the family toward the waiting medical team. Inside the ambulance, a paramedic wrapped Chloe in thermal blankets while checking her vitals. Mild hypothermia, some frostbite on her fingers and nose, but nothing severe, he reported. It's remarkable. Honestly, she shouldn't be in this good condition after a night in those temperatures. How did you survive out there, sweetheart? Benjamin asked, holding his daughter's hand carefully to avoid her damaged fingertips. Chloe's eyes found Harrison, who stood awkwardly in the ambulance doorway. I told Mr. Harrison already. Silverwind helped me. The silver mare. Catherine and Benjamin exchanged glances. Chloe, honey horses don't, Benjamin began gently. It's true, Chloe interrupted with unexpected firmness. She found me when I got lost. She led me to a cave where we sheltered from the storm. She lay beside me all night to keep me warm. Her voice grew more insistent. When wolves came, we scared them away together. This morning she showed me where to find berries and water. The adults fell silent, unsure how to respond to the fantastical story. Only Catherine's expression held something different, Not disbelief, but wonder. And there's more, Chloe continued. Her colt was caught in one of Mr. Harrison's traps. I let him out. That's when Mr. Harrison found me. All eyes turned to the rancher, who shifted uncomfortably under their gaze. It's true about the trap, he admitted. Found her standing next to one I'd set up 2 days ago. Door was open, and she said she'd freed a colt. He hesitated. There was a mare watching us from the trees. The same one folks call Silver Wind. Walter's radio crackled, breaking the moment. Bishop, this is Ramirez. We've reached the cave site Chloe described. There's evidence of recent occupation fire remnants areas where snow is compacted and hoof prints. Lots of them. Over. Walter responded, his expression thoughtful. Copy that, Ramirez. Anything else? Over. Sir, we found wolf tracks surrounding the cave entrance. A full pack by the looks of it. And, Lucia paused, there's blood in the snow. Not human. Appears something fought with the wolves. Over. A stunned silence fell over the group in the ambulance. That would be consistent with Chloe's account, the paramedic said quietly. We should get her to the hospital, Catherine said, finding her voice. She needs proper care and rest. As they prepared to depart, Judy Campbell arrived in her truck, her face tear-streaked and relieved. After another emotional reunion, Chloe was transferred to the ambulance for the journey to Valley Forge Memorial Hospital. Before the doors closed, she caught Harrison's eye. Please don't put out any more traps, she said. Please. The rancher held her gaze for a long moment before nodding, once a silent agreement that left everyone wondering what had transpired between them in the forest. At the hospital, Chloe was admitted for observation while being treated for mild hypothermia and first-degree frostbite. The attending physician, Dr. Morris, expressed amazement at her condition. By all rights, she should have much more severe exposure symptoms. He told the anxious family in the hallway outside Chloe's room. Someone was looking out for her out there, or something. Later that evening, when Chloe had been settled into a private room and Benjamin had stepped out for coffee, Catherine sat beside her daughter's bed, gently brushing hair from her forehead. I need you to tell me everything about Silver Wind, she said softly. Every detail you can remember. Chloe studied her mother's face. You believe me, don't you, when no one else does? Catherine nodded. I do. I've spent years studying those Mustangs. There's something special about that mare. She squeezed her daughter's hand. Tell me what happened. All of it. As Chloe recounted her ordeal, Catherine listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed her scientific mind working beneath her maternal concern. When Chloe finished, Catherine sat back, her expression thoughtful. Mom, Chloe asked hesitantly, why did she help me? Wild horses don't do that, right? Catherine chose her words carefully. Maternal instinct is powerful across species. I think when Silver Wind lost track of Arrow in the storm, she was already in a protective state. Finding you small, vulnerable, lost just like her foal, might have triggered that same instinct. But how did she know to find berries for me or to keep me warm? Intelligence and instinct together, perhaps? Catherine leaned forward. Horses are more perceptive than most people realize. They read body language, sense emotions. Silver Wind may have responded to your distress signals in ways we don't fully understand. A knock at the door interrupted them. To their surprise, Scott Harrison stood in the doorway, hat in hand. Sorry to intrude, he said awkwardly. Just wanted to check on the little lady. Catherine's expression cooled. She's recovering well. No thanks to those traps you set. Mom, Chloe admonished quietly. Harrison stepped into the room. No, she's right to be angry. I came to say... He twisted his hat in his hands. I pulled up all my traps this afternoon. Both Catherine and Chloe stared at him in surprise. You did? Catherine asked. Harrison nodded. Got to thinking about what your daughter said about the mare helping her. He looked uncomfortable. Been fighting against those Mustangs for years. Never stopped to consider they might be worth more alive and free than removed. What changed your mind? Catherine asked cautiously. Harrison met Chloe's eyes. When I found her, that silver mare could have run, could have bolted the second she saw me on that snowmobile. But she didn't. She stood her ground, watching your girl like she was making sure I wasn't a threat. He shook his head in wonder. Never seen anything like it. Made me question some things. The land dispute, Catherine pressed. I'm not saying I've gone completely soft, Harrison clarified. My cattle still need grazing land, but maybe there's a middle path. Your conservation proposal from last year, the one with the rotating grazing rights, I'd like to take another look at it. Catherine's expression softened. I'd be happy to discuss it again. Harrison nodded and turned to leave, pausing at the door. Your daughter's got more courage than most grown men I know. Standing up to me like that, protecting those horses. With a final nod, he departed. Chloe and her mother sat in stunned silence. Did that really just happen? Chloe asked finally. Catherine smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. Sometimes it takes a miracle to change someone's mind. You and Silverwind together, that was the miracle. Just now, morning. The next morning, Chloe was released from the hospital with instructions to rest and gradually warm her frostbitten extremities. The family returned to Judy's ranch where news of Chloe's miraculous survival had spread throughout Valley Forge. Reporters gathered at the end of the driveway, kept at bay by Deputy Matthews. I don't want to talk to them, Chloe said, watching from the living room window as Benjamin politely but firmly turned away another journalist. You don't have to, Judy assured her, bringing a mug of hot cocoa. They'll lose interest eventually. But Chloe's rescue had captured more than local attention. By evening, national news vans had arrived, broadcasting stories about the Mustang miracle to audiences across the country. The narrative of a wild horse saving a child resonated deeply, especially when paired with Catherine's expert commentary on Mustang behavior and conservation issues. We could use this, Catherine mused that night as the family gathered in Judy's kitchen. Public attention is focused on these horses in a positive way for once. It could help the conservation effort. Are you suggesting we exploit what happened? Benjamin asked, concerned. Not exploit, Catherine clarified. Educate people. Connect with stories. Chloe and Silverwind's story could change minds like it changed Harrison's. Silverwind's still out there, Chloe said quietly, with Arrow and the herd. What happens to them now? Catherine considered her daughter's question. We'll see. With Harrison reconsidering his position, we might be able to establish a protected corridor for the herd. But there's still the BLM roundups to worry about. I want to go back, Chloe announced suddenly, to see her again. The adults exchanged concerned glances. Absolutely not, Benjamin said firmly. You nearly died out there. The storm's passed, Chloe argued, and I wouldn't go alone. We could go together with rangers just to check on them. Chloe, wild Mustangs avoid humans, Judy explained gently. Even if we found the herd, Silverwind would likely run. She wouldn't run from me, Chloe insisted. She knows me now. Catherine studied her daughter thoughtfully. You know there might be something to that. She turned to Benjamin. We've been trying to implement a tracking program for conservation research. If we could attach a monitoring device to Silverwind. You want to capture her? Chloe asked, alarmed. No, Catherine assured her. There are non-invasive methods, but we'd need to get close enough. If she truly formed a bond with you, Benjamin looked skeptical. You're not seriously considering this. With proper preparations and ranger support, it could work, Catherine argued, and the data would be invaluable for protecting the herd. Please, Dad, Chloe pleaded. I need to see her again, to thank her. Benjamin sighed, recognizing the determined look his daughter and wife shared. We'll discuss it with Ranger Bishop tomorrow, he conceded. No promises. That night, Chloe couldn't sleep. She stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the moonlit landscape. Somewhere out there, Silverwind and her herd were roaming free. The connection she felt with the mare hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger with reflection. She couldn't explain it, but she knew with absolute certainty that Silverwind would remember her. As she turned to go back to bed, something on her nightstand caught her attention, the velvet pouch her grandmother had shown her just days ago containing the silver horse pendant. Chloe picked it up, wondering why Judy had left it there. Opening the pouch, she examined the exquisite pendant in the moonlight, noting how the silver caught the light in a way that reminded her of Silverwind's coat. Carefully, she placed the pendant back in its pouch, a sense of destiny settling over her. Whatever happened next, she knew her path was now intertwined with that of the silver mare who had saved her life. 3 days after Chloe's rescue, Walter Bishop's truck bounced along the Forest Service road, following the eastern path towards Silver Creek Valley. In the back seat, Chloe pressed her face against the window, scanning the pristine landscape for any sign of movement. Catherine sat beside her, reviewing the tracking equipment in her lap. "Remember the agreement?" Walter reminded them, his eyes on the treacherous road. "We stay together. No one wanders off. If we spot the herd, we observe from a distance, unless I give the all clear." "We understand," Catherine affirmed, adjusting the small, lightweight tracking device she hoped to attach to Silverwind. "The transmitter's range is about 5 miles. It'll give us valuable data on migration patterns and grazing territories." Benjamin turned from the passenger seat. "You still sure about this, Chloe? The herd might not even be in this area anymore." "They're here," Chloe said with quiet certainty. "I can feel it." Lucia Ramirez followed in a second vehicle with Travis and specialized equipment. The Forest Service had officially sanctioned the expedition as a research operation, but everyone understood the personal stakes for the Adams family. When they reached the planned observation point, Walter cut the engine. "This is where we set up. According to Dr. Adams' research, the herd frequently passes through this valley in the late morning." The team worked efficiently, establishing a small base camp and positioning long-range cameras. Catherine explained the equipment to Chloe. "These won't harm Silverwind in any way," she assured her daughter. "The tracker adheres temporarily to her coat and will fall off naturally during spring shedding." Chloe nodded, her attention focused on the ridgeline. "How will we get close enough?" "That's the challenge," Catherine admitted. "Normally, wild Mustangs won't allow humans within 50 yards. They settled in to wait, the hours passing slowly. By mid-afternoon, Walter was checking his watch with increasing frequency. "We'll need to head back before dark," he warned. Catherine sighed, disappointment evident. "Maybe they've moved to the southern range earlier than usual." "No," Chloe insisted. "They're nearby. I know it." As if summoned by her certainty, a movement on the distant ridge caught Travis's attention. "Look," he whispered, urgently pointing. All binoculars turned toward the spot. There, silhouetted against the sky, stood a horse, its silver coat unmistakable even at a distance. "Silverwind," Catherine breathed. "And she's not alone." More horses appeared along the ridge, 8, then 12, finally 17 Mustangs in total. The herd moved with careful precision, picking their way down the slope toward the valley floor. "They're heading for the western creek," Walter observed. "Probably for water." "This is our chance," Catherine said, gathering her equipment. "If they stop to drink, we might get close enough." Walter nodded. "We'll approach slowly in the vehicles, less threatening than on foot. But keep your expectations realistic. Wild horses don't typically allow close human contact." As they loaded into the trucks, Chloe's heart raced with anticipation. Would Silverwind remember her? Or had their connection been circumstantial, broken the moment she returned to civilization? Walter drove with excruciating slowness, taking a wide arc to approach the creek without alarming the herd. When they were about 200 yards away, he stopped. "This is as close as we dare in the vehicles," he said. "Dr. Adams, what's your assessment?" Catherine studied the herd through binoculars. "They're aware of us but not panicking. That's unusual in itself." She lowered the binoculars, her expression thoughtful. "I think we should let Chloe try." "Absolutely not," Benjamin protested. "It's too dangerous." "She won't be alone," Catherine assured him. "Lucy and I will go with her. Very slowly, no sudden movements." Walter considered this. "The herd's behavior is atypical. They should have bolted by now." He nodded. "I'll allow it, but at the first sign of agitation, you all come back immediately." Benjamin looked torn but finally nodded. "Be careful," he told Chloe, squeezing her hand. With Catherine on one side and Lucy on the other, Chloe began a slow approach toward the creek. The Mustangs raised their heads, watching intently but not fleeing. Silverwind stood slightly apart from the others, her attention fixed on the approaching humans. "Talk to her," Catherine whispered. "She might recognize your voice." "Silverwind," Chloe called softly. "It's me. Remember?" The mare's ears pricked forward. She took a step away from the herd, head-high, nostrils flaring to catch their scent. "That's it," Lucia murmured. "She's curious, not frightened." They paused at about 50 yards, letting the mare make the next move. For long moments, nothing happened. The herd continued drinking, though alert to the human presence. Silverwind remained motionless, her gaze locked on Chloe. "Maybe this is as close as we get," Catherine said, readying a long-distance launcher for the tracking device. "I can attempt deployment from here." "Wait," Chloe said. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward alone, ignoring her mother's concerned inhale. "Silver Wind," she called again, her voice stronger. "Thank you for saving me." The mare's reaction stunned everyone watching. She took a deliberate step forward, then another. The distance between them began to close 40 yards at 30-20. "Unbelievable," Lucia whispered, lifting her camera to document the interaction. When only 15 yards separated them, Silver Wind stopped. She lowered her head slightly, then raised it again, a gesture Chloe somehow understood. An invitation. "Can I go closer?" Chloe asked, not taking her eyes off the mare. Catherine swallowed hard. "Very slowly. Stop if she seems uncomfortable." Heart pounding, Chloe moved forward one careful step at a time. The entire world seemed to hold its breath, the humans behind her, the herd at the creek, even the wind in the pines. 10 yards, 8, 5. At 3 yards, Chloe stopped, remembering her mother's teaching that prey animals need space. It was Silver Wind who closed the final distance, stepping deliberately forward until she stood directly before the girl. "Hi," Chloe whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I missed you." Slowly telegraphing her movements, she raised her hand. Silver Wind watched unmoving. When Chloe's palm gently touched the mare's nose, a collective gasp rose from the observers. "She remembers," Chloe said, her voice thick with emotion. "She knows me." Catherine approached carefully, the tracking device in hand. "Chloe, I need to attach this while she's calm. Is that okay?" Chloe nodded, continuing to stroke Silver Wind's face. "It won't hurt her," she assured the mare, as if the wild animal could understand her words. With practiced movements, Catherine attached the small device to Silver Wind's mane, tucking it securely among the silver strands. The mare remained still, her eyes never leaving Chloe's face. A soft whinny from the creek drew Silver Wind's attention. Arrow. The dark colt had approached cautiously, curious about the interaction. The mare responded with a low nicker that seemed to reassure him. "He's beautiful," Chloe said. "I'm glad he's safe." For several precious minutes, the extraordinary scene continued, a wild Mustang, voluntarily interacting with humans, allowing herself to be touched, even allowing her foal to approach. Cameras documented everything, though no footage could capture the emotional weight of the moment. Finally, Silver Wind took a step back. She tossed her head once, as if coming to a decision, then turned toward her herd. With a flick of her silver tail, she trotted back to the creek, Arrow following close behind. "She's saying goodbye," Chloe realized, tears streaming down her face. "For now." Catherine put an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "What happened here today is unprecedented. You've helped us learn something new about Mustang behavior and intelligence." "Will the tracker help protect them?" Chloe asked as they walked back to the waiting vehicles. "It's a start," Catherine confirmed. "With data on their migration patterns and territory needs, we can make a stronger case for preservation." When they reached the trucks, Walter was shaking his head in amazement. 28 years as a ranger, and I've never seen anything like that. You've got a gift with animals, young lady." Benjamin hugged his daughter tightly. "I'm sorry I doubted you," he whispered. The drive back to Valley Forge was filled with excited discussion and planning. Catherine was already formulating research questions based on the day's observations, while Lucia reviewed the video footage they'd captured. "We should organize a community meeting," Catherine suggested. "Share what we've learned. Build local support for conservation. Harrison might be willing to co-sponsor," Benjamin added. "Show a united front between ranching and conservation interests." Chloe listened to their plans, a sense of purpose growing within her. What had begun as a terrifying ordeal had transformed into something meaningful, a chance to protect the Mustangs that had protected her. At Judy's ranch that evening, the family gathered around the fire, processing the day's events. Chloe sat beside Sadie, absently stroking the border collie's fur. "What are you thinking about, sweetheart?" Judy asked, noticing her granddaughter's pensive expression. "I was just wondering if Silver Wind knows how much she changed things," Chloe replied. "For the Mustangs, for Mr. Harrison, for all of us." "Some connections transcend explanation," Judy said thoughtfully. "My grandmother used to say that animals choose us as much as we choose them." "I didn't choose Silver Wind, though," Chloe pointed out. "She chose me, and that makes all the difference." "Science can explain a lot," Catherine said, "but not everything, not the why of it all." Benjamin joined them, laptop in hand. "You might want to see this." he said, turning the screen toward them. The footage Lucia uploaded is going viral. Over 100,000 views already. The screen showed Silver Wind approaching Chloe, the gentle touch between girl and wild mare. Comments poured in from viewers around the country expressing amazement and support for Mustang conservation. People are listening, Catherine said, hope evident in her voice. They're seeing these horses differently now because of you and Silver Wind. As the others continued talking, Judy slipped away, returning moments later with the velvet pouch. She placed it in Chloe's hands. I think it's time, she said softly. Chloe looked up at her grandmother questioningly. Elizabeth Red Feather gave me this pendant many years ago, Judy explained. She told me it would find its way to the next chosen one when the time was right. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I think that's you, Chloe. With reverent hands, Chloe opened the pouch and withdrew the silver horse pendant. It seemed to catch the firelight, glowing with an inner radiance. May I? Judy asked, lifting the leather cord. When Chloe nodded, her grandmother placed it around her neck, the silver horse coming to rest over her heart. Elizabeth believed that certain people are chosen by the spirits to bridge the gap between humans and nature. Judy continued, her voice barely above a whisper. She called them keepers of the bond. I think Silver Wind recognized something in you that the rest of us are only beginning to understand. Chloe touched the pendant, feeling a strange sense of rightness, as if a circle had been completed. Tell me about the cave, Judy asked, the one where you and Silver Wind sheltered. It was small but deep enough to keep us safe, Chloe recalled. There were drawings on the walls, horses and people together. Judy and Catherine exchanged a significant look. What? Chloe asked, noticing the exchange. Those petroglyphs are sacred to the northern Arapaho, Judy explained. Elizabeth once told me about a special cave where, according to legend, the first bond between humans and horses was formed. It was considered a place of power, where the veil between worlds was thin. You think that's the same cave? Benjamin asked skeptically. I don't know, Judy admitted, but it seems like more than coincidence that Silver Wind would lead Chloe there of all places. Chloe fingered the silver pendant, remembering the sense of connection she'd felt in that cave, the way the ancient drawings had seemed to watch over them through the long, cold night. There's someone you should meet, Judy said after a moment. Sam Running Bear. He's Elizabeth's nephew and a tribal elder now. He might be able to help us understand what's happening. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. I'd like that. The more perspectives we have, the better we can protect the herd. As the conversation turned to practical matters of conservation, Chloe remained quiet, her mind filled with images of Silver Wind standing guard at the cave entrance, leading her to food and water, approaching her today, across a divide no wild horse should willingly cross. Whatever forces had brought them together, whatever ancient bonds were being reawakened, Chloe knew her life had changed forever. The silver pendant felt warm against her skin, as if acknowledging this truth, this commitment, this unexpected destiny that had found her in the heart of a blizzard. 1 week later, the town hall of Valley Forge was packed beyond capacity. Residents spilled onto the sidewalk outside, listening through open windows as Catherine Adams and Scott Harrison stood side by side, presenting a joint proposal for Mustang conservation. What we're suggesting is a balanced approach, Catherine explained, indicating the maps projected on the wall. Protected corridors for the Mustang herds combined with designated grazing areas for cattle. Not competition, but coexistence. Harrison stepped forward. I've been fighting against these wild horses for years. Thought they were nothing but trouble. He paused, looking toward Chloe in the front row. I was wrong. What happened out there in that blizzard, that wasn't just luck. That was something special. The mayor of Valley Forge, impressed by the unexpected alliance between former adversaries, pledged the town's support for the initiative. Walter Bishop announced that the Forest Service would implement new protective measures for the Pine Ridge Mustangs, starting immediately. As the meeting concluded to enthusiastic applause, a reporter approached Chloe. Do you think you'll see Silver Wind again? She asked. Chloe smiled, fingering the small silver horse pendant that now rarely left her neck, a reminder of the mare who had saved her life. I know I will, she said with quiet confidence. Some connections never break, even between the wild and the tame. Later that evening, as the sun set over Pine Ridge, Catherine checked the tracking data on her computer. A blinking dot showed Silver Wind's position, leading her herd along the ridgeline wild and free, yet now connected to the humans who would ensure that freedom endured. On the porch, Chloe gazed toward those distant mountains, feeling a sense of completion. The herd was safe, at least for now. The work of permanent protection would continue, but today marked a turning point not just for the Mustangs, but for Valley Forge itself. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind, knowing somehow that across the miles, a silver mare might sense her gratitude. In the wilderness, beyond human boundaries, Silver Wind raised her head, ears pricked toward the distant town. For a moment she stood motionless, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then with a soft nicker to her herd, she continued along her path, carrying the memory of a human child, and the promise of a future where wild and domestic might find a way to coexist in mutual respect and freedom. The spring sun warmed Valley Forge, melting away the last remnants of the historic blizzard. Pine Ridge transformed from a snow-covered wilderness into a vibrant landscape of wildflowers and new growth. 3 months had passed since Chloe's rescue, and life had changed dramatically for both the Adams family and the Mustang herd. At Cedar Ridge Station, Catherine studied the large wall map now adorned with colored pins tracking Silver Wind's movements. The data collected from the tracking device had proven invaluable, revealing migration patterns and preferred grazing areas that had never been properly documented before. "The Northern Valley is clearly their summer preference," she explained to Walter and Lucia, who stood beside her. "They've returned to the same location 3 weeks in a row." "Perfect timing for the documentary crew," Lucia remarked, checking her calendar. "They arrive tomorrow, right?" Catherine nodded. "National Geographic. They want to film the herd in their natural environment and interview Chloe about her experience." Walter rubbed his beard thoughtfully. "Never thought I'd see Pine Ridge become famous for Mustang conservation. Harrison's even giving interviews now talking about sustainable land management." "People respond to stories," Catherine said, "and Chloe and Silver Wind's story touched something universal." She tapped the map. "The Bureau of Land Management representatives are visiting next week to discuss our proposal for permanent protected status." Lucia smiled. "From near tragedy to potentially saving an entire Mustang population. It's remarkable how life works sometimes." At Whispering Pines Ranch, Benjamin and Judy watched as Chloe guided a group of elementary school students through the newly established Mustang Education Center. What had once been an unused barn on Judy's property had been transformed into a learning space filled with photographs, informational displays, and interactive exhibits about wild horses. "And this," Chloe said, pointing to a large photograph of Silver Wind, "is the Mustang who taught us that wild animals are capable of empathy and intelligence beyond what we previously understood." A small boy raised his hand. "Did she really save you? My dad says wild horses are dangerous." "Wild horses are both dangerous and magnificent," Chloe answered carefully. "They deserve our respect, which means keeping a safe distance usually. What happened between Silver Wind and me was exceptional, not something anyone should try to recreate." "Then how do we protect them if we can't go near them?" a girl asked. Chloe smiled. "By protecting their home, by understanding their needs and giving them space to live freely. Sometimes the best way to care for something wild is to let it be wild, just in a safe environment." As the children moved to the next exhibit, Benjamin approached his daughter. "You've become quite the teacher," he observed proudly. "I'm just sharing what Silver Wind taught me," Chloe replied. "Every group that comes through here means more people who understand why the Mustangs matter." The Education Center had been Chloe's idea, born during her recovery. While the viral video of her reunion with Silver Wind had garnered attention, she insisted that meaningful change required education. With help from her family and donations from newly supportive community members, the center had opened just a month earlier. "The tour bus from Denver arrives in an hour," Benjamin reminded her. "Are you ready for the larger group?" Chloe nodded confidently. "Mom's joining us for that one. She'll handle the scientific questions." Later that afternoon, as Catherine led the Denver tourists through the technical aspects of Mustang behavior and biology, Chloe slipped outside for a moment of quiet. She walked to the fence line overlooking the eastern pasture, where the land gradually rose toward Pine Ridge. The silver horse pendant her grandmother had given her caught the sunlight as she instinctively reached for it, a habit she'd developed over the past months. "Penny for your thoughts." Scott Harrison's voice interrupted her solitude as the rancher approached, his usual worn hat in hand. Just thinking about Silver Wind, Chloe admitted. The tracking data shows the herd is only about 5 miles from here today. Harrison nodded. Your mother showed me the migration maps. Pretty incredible how much territory they cover. He leaned against the fence. Never thought I'd be helping Mustang conservation efforts. People can change, Chloe observed. So can circumstances. Harrison gazed toward the mountains. The grazing rotation system your mother designed is working well. My cattle have better access to the western grasslands. The Mustangs have protected corridors. Everybody wins. Is that why you came by, to talk about the grazing system? Harrison shook his head. Actually, I came to tell you about something I saw this morning. I was checking fence lines along the north property and spotted the herd moving through Boulder Canyon. He paused. Silver Wind has a new foal. Tiny little thing. Couldn't be more than a few days old. White star on its forehead, just like its mama. Chloe's eyes widened. A new baby? Are you sure it was hers? No doubt about it. That mare's distinctive, and the foal was right alongside her. Arrow was nearby too, looking every bit the protective older brother. Joy bubbled through Chloe. That's wonderful. Mom will want to document it. The tracking data hadn't indicated a birth yet. Life finds a way, Harrison said simply. Figured you'd want to know. As Harrison departed, Chloe remained at the fence, filled with a warm sense of continuity. Silver Wind wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, her family growing in the wild as it should. The following day, Catherine prepared for the National Geographic film crew's arrival. Their interest had been sparked by the viral video, but deepened when they learned about the conservation initiative that had grown from the incident. They'll want dramatic storytelling, she warned Chloe as they ate breakfast. Just stick to the facts as you experience them. No need to embellish. I never do, Chloe replied, slightly offended. The truth is dramatic enough. Catherine smiled apologetically. Of course, I just mean these nature documentaries sometimes anthropomorphize wildlife behavior. Silver Wind acted on instinct combined with unusual intelligence. We need to be careful not to assign human emotions or reasoning to her actions. But she did save me, Chloe insisted. She made choices that kept me alive. Yes, she did, Catherine agreed. And that's extraordinary enough without speculation about her motivations. Benjamin entered the kitchen, phone in hand. That was the director. They've arrived at the ranger station and are meeting Walter first for some context shots. They'll be here in about 2 hours. Perfect, Catherine said. That gives us time to prepare the presentation materials. The documentary crew consisted of a director, 2 camera operators, a sound technician, and a wildlife biologist named Dr. Elaine Mercer, who specialized in equine behavior. After introductions and initial interviews at the education center, the conversation turned to the heart of the story. Chloe, Dr. Mercer began, I've studied wild horses for 20 years and never documented behavior quite like what you experienced with Silver Wind. Can you walk me through exactly what happened when the wolves approached the cave? Chloe described the encounter in detail, how Silver Wind had positioned herself between Chloe and the predators, how they had worked together with the fire to drive the wolves away. And you're certain she was protecting you specifically? Dr. Mercer pressed. Not just defending herself. She moved me deeper into the cave first, Chloe explained. She could have run farther inside herself, used me as a distraction, but she didn't. Dr. Mercer nodded thoughtfully. Fascinating. There are documented cases of domestic horses protecting humans, but virtually none involving truly wild Mustangs. This challenges some fundamental assumptions about wild versus domestic behavior. The director turned to Catherine. You mentioned your previous encounter with Silver Wind during her foaling difficulty. Could that experience have created some level of recognition or trust? It's possible, Catherine acknowledged. Mustangs have excellent long-term memory, particularly for events associated with high stress or survival. My intervention during Arrow's birth might have created a positive association. And we've just learned she has a new foal, Chloe added excitedly. Dr. Mercer leaned forward. Recent within the past week. According to a reliable observer, yes. That adds another fascinating dimension, Dr. Mercer said. Her maternal protective instincts would have been particularly strong. The hormonal influences during late pregnancy and early postpartum periods can significantly affect behavior. The documentary team spent the rest of the day filming at key locations, the edge of the forest, where Chloe had first spotted Silver Wind. The education center exhibits and interviews with community members whose perspectives had shifted. Harrison spoke candidly about his changed attitudes, while Walter provided the historical context of human Mustang conflict in the region. As the day wound down, the director made an unexpected proposal. We'd like to attempt to film the herd tomorrow, particularly Silver Wind and her new foal. With the tracking data, is there a location where we might observe them from a safe, non-disruptive distance? Catherine considered this. There's a ridge overlooking the northern valley. If the herd follows their recent pattern, they should pass through tomorrow morning. We could set up there before dawn. Long-range cameras, minimal crew. Would Chloe join us? The director asked. Her presence would complete the narrative arc beautifully. Benjamin looked concerned. We've been careful not to intrude on the herd too frequently. We don't want to habituate them to human presence. One observation properly managed shouldn't create habituation, Dr. Mercer assured him. And the footage could be invaluable for education and conservation advocacy. After discussion, a plan was formed. A small group, Catherine, Chloe, Walter for safety, and a minimal film crew would position themselves on the ridge before sunrise. They would remain downwind and maintain absolute silence using only telephoto lenses to capture the herd from a distance. The next morning, Chloe woke before her alarm excitement, making sleep impossible. They departed in darkness, the eastern sky just beginning to lighten as they reached the observation point. Walter helped the crew set up their equipment, while Catherine checked the tracking data on her tablet. The herd is approximately 1 mile south, she whispered, moving this direction. Should reach the valley floor within the hour. They settled in to wait dawn, gradually illuminating the landscape below. The valley spread before them, a natural basin, rich with spring growth, and a meandering creek, perfect grazing territory for the Mustangs. Movement, the camera operator breathed, adjusting his lens. Through binoculars, Chloe spotted them. First, a single Mustang emerging from the tree line, then more following. Her heart quickened as she searched for the distinctive silver coat among the browns and bays. There, Catherine whispered, pointing. Silver Wind appeared at the edge of the forest, moving with the measured pace of a new mother. Beside her trotted the foal Harrison had described, tiny with spindly legs, and a coat that suggested it would mature into the same silver shade as its mother. A white star marked its forehead, just as Harrison had said. Arrows with them, Chloe noted, spotting the yearling colt hovering protectively near his mother and new sibling. The cameras worked quietly, capturing the family group as they moved with the larger herd toward the creek. Dr. Mercer observed through specialized binoculars, occasionally murmuring into a small recorder. Textbook protective formation, she noted, the foal positioned between mother and yearling, sheltered from exposure on either side. As they watched, Silver Wind suddenly raised her head, ears pricked forward in their direction, though they were well concealed in downwind. Something had caught her attention. She senses us, Walter whispered. The mare stared directly toward their position for a long moment. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she broke from the herd's path and began walking deliberately toward the ridge. What's she doing? The director asked nervously. Investigating, Catherine replied, equally puzzled. This isn't typical behavior. They remained frozen in place as Silver Wind climbed partway up the slope, still accompanied by her foal and arrow. When she reached a rocky outcropping about 50 yards below their position, she stopped. Chloe held her breath, afraid to move, but filled with wonder. Silver Wind was looking directly at them now, no directly at her. There was no way the mare could pick out individual humans at this distance. Yet something about her posture suggested recognition. She's showing us her foal, Chloe whispered, the realization coming with absolute certainty. For several precious minutes, Silver Wind remained on the outcropping, her foal nursing briefly, before prancing around its mother on unsteady legs. The cameras captured everything, this unprecedented behavior, this seemingly deliberate introduction. Then, with a toss of her silver mane, Silver Wind turned and guided her offspring back down to the herd, which had continued grazing undisturbed by her brief detour. That was, Dr. Mercer seemed at a loss for words. I've never observed anything like it. Almost as if, Lucia began, as if she wanted us to see, Chloe finished quietly, to know that she's okay, that life goes on. Walter shook his head in amazement. I've watched wild horses for decades. They don't approach humans voluntarily, especially not with vulnerable foals. Silver Wind isn't just any Mustang. Catherine said her scientific detachment momentarily overwhelmed by emotion. She's rewriting what we understand about wild horse behavior. As they packed up their equipment later, the documentary director was elated. That footage is extraordinary. The mother Mustang, who saved a human child, now showing off her own newborn. You couldn't script a better ending. But Chloe knew it wasn't an ending at all. It was continuity life flowing forward generations, succeeding one another, wild and free as they were meant to be. What had begun in crisis during the storm had bloomed into something lasting and meaningful. On the drive back to Valley Forge, Chloe gazed out the window at the wilderness stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, Silver Wind led her growing family through ancient migration routes that would now remain protected for generations to come. "You're quiet," Catherine observed. "Just happy," Chloe replied, fingering her silver horse pendant. "Everything feels right." "Complete," Catherine smiled, understanding. "Nature has its own wisdom. We're just beginning to listen properly." The sun climbed higher as they descended toward town, its light catching on the distant figures of the Mustang herd as they disappeared over a ridge wild and free, yet forever connected to the humans who had learned to see them, not as resources to be managed, but as beings worthy of protection and respect. 2 days later, Chloe and Judy drove down the winding dirt road that led to the Northern Arapaho Reservation just outside Valley Forge. Judy had arranged a meeting with Sam Running Bear Elizabeth Redfeather's nephew and a respected tribal elder. "Will he tell me about the cave?" Chloe asked, her fingers unconsciously finding the silver pendant at her neck. "Sam knows the old stories better than anyone," Judy replied. "If anyone can explain what happened between you and Silver Wind, it's him." They parked before a modest home surrounded by towering pines. The front porch was adorned with colorful woven blankets and potted native plants. A man in his 70s sat in a rocking chair, his silver hair pulled back in a traditional braid. Despite his age, his dark eyes were sharp and alert as he watched them approach. "Judith Campbell," he called in greeting. "It's been too long." Judy smiled warmly. "Sam, thank you for seeing us." "Kara, so this is the girl who befriended Silver Wind," Sam said, his gaze falling on Chloe. "I've heard much about you." "This is my granddaughter, Chloe," Judy confirmed. Sam nodded, his expression serious. "I see she wears the pendant." "Elizabeth gave it to me many years ago," Judy explained. "I passed it on to Chloe after what happened." "Come inside," Sam invited, rising with surprising agility. "We have much to discuss." The interior of Sam's home was warm and filled with artifacts from his heritage, dream catchers, painted drums, and photographs of tribal gatherings. He directed them to a comfortable seating area and offered tea, which they gratefully accepted. "So," Sam began, settling into an armchair across from them. "Tell me about the cave." Chloe described the small cave where she and Silver Wind had sheltered the petroglyphs on the walls, the feeling of safety despite the raging storm outside the wolves they had faced together. Sam listened intently, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "The cave you describe is known to my people as Wapiti Natu, the place of horse spirit," he explained. "According to our stories, it is where the first bond between humans and horses was formed many generations ago." "Elizabeth mentioned something about that," Judy said, "but she never told me the whole story." Sam's gaze moved to the window, as if looking into the distant past. "Our ancestors tell of a time when a great winter storm, much like the one you experienced, swept through these mountains. A young boy from our tribe became separated from his hunting party. As night fell and the cold deepened, he sought shelter in that cave." Chloe leaned forward, captivated. "In those days, horses were still new to our people, creatures of mystery and power. As the boy huddled in the cave fighting to stay warm, a silver mare entered. Instead of fleeing, she lay beside him, sharing her warmth through the night. When morning came, she led him back to his people. Just like Silver Wind did for me," Chloe whispered. Sam nodded. From that day forward, the boy had a special way with horses. He could approach even the wildest stallions without fear. He taught our people that horses were not just beasts to be used, but partners to be respected. He gestured to Chloe's pendant. That symbol was created to honor the bond formed in that cave, a reminder that some connections transcend the boundaries we place between species. But why me? Chloe asked. Why did Silver Wind choose to help me? Sam studied her face. Elizabeth believed that in every generation, certain individuals are chosen, those with the ability to bridge worlds, to remind us of connections we have forgotten. She called them keepers of the bond. And she thought I might be one, Judy asked. She saw potential in you, Sam acknowledged. But the pendant has found its rightful keeper now. He looked meaningfully at Chloe. Do you believe these stories? Chloe asked carefully. About horse spirits and chosen people. Sam's smile was gentle. What I believe matters less than what happened. You entered a sacred place during a moment of great need. A wild mare chose to protect you when all her instincts should have told her to flee. You found your way back to each other against impossible odds. He spread his hands. Some would call it coincidence, others destiny. My people would say the spirits were at work. My mother would say it was a combination of unusual intelligence and extreme circumstances, Chloe said with a small smile. Perhaps all these explanations have truth in them, Sam suggested. The world is full of mysteries that cannot be contained by a single understanding. Before they left, Sam presented Chloe with a small leather-bound journal. Elizabeth kept records of her encounters with the Mustangs. She would want you to have this. It may help you understand the path ahead. Chloe accepted the gift with reverence. Thank you. As they walked back to the car, Judy placed a gentle hand on Chloe's shoulder. What do you think of all that? Chloe considered the question. I think there's more to Silver Wind than we understand. More to all of this. She touched the pendant. And I think I was meant to be in that forest during the storm, even if I can't explain why. Judy smiled, a quiet pride in her eyes. Elizabeth would have liked you very much. On the drive home, Chloe opened the journal, running her fingers over the faded handwriting. The pages were filled with observations about the Mustang herd, sketches of individual horses, and notes about their behaviors. Interspersed throughout were reflections on the spiritual connection between humans and horses, the ancient bonds that modern life had all but forgotten. One passage in particular caught her attention. The silver mare returned today, watching from the ridge as I gathered herbs. There is awareness in her eyes that goes beyond animal instinct, a recognition and understanding. The elders speak of horse spirits who walk between worlds, guardians of an ancient covenant between our species. I am beginning to believe these are more than just stories. Chloe closed the journal, a sense of purpose settling over her. Whatever forces had brought her and Silver Wind together, whatever ancient bonds they represented, she knew her responsibility now was to protect that connection, not just for herself, but for all who would come after. 2 weeks later, an unexpected visitor arrived at Judy's ranch. A sleek black car with government plates pulled up to the house, and a woman in a crisp business suit emerged. She introduced herself as Rebecca Winters from Rocky Mountain Development Corporation. I was hoping to speak with Ms. Catherine Adams, she said with a practiced smile. I understand she's been spearheading the Mustang Conservation Initiative. Catherine invited the woman inside, where Benjamin and Chloe joined them in the living room. Walter Bishop arrived shortly after, having received a call from Catherine. We've been following your work with great interest. Ms. Winters began setting a leather portfolio on the coffee table. The innovative approach to land management, the cooperation between conservation and ranching interests, it's impressive. Thank you, Catherine replied cautiously. But I doubt a development corporation is interested in our work for its conservation merits alone. Miss Winter's smile didn't waver. Direct. I appreciate that. She opened her portfolio. My company represents investors who see tremendous potential in Valley Forge. The publicity surrounding your daughter's rescue and the subsequent conservation efforts has put this town on the map. What exactly are you proposing? Benjamin asked. A comprehensive development plan. She spread several glossy renderings across the table. A resort and spa complex that would bring tourism dollars to the area, create jobs, and boost the local economy. We're prepared to make very generous offers to key landowners, including Mrs. Campbell and Mr. Harrison. Walter leaned forward, studying the maps with a frown. This development would cut directly across the Mustangs' migration corridor. We've accounted for wildlife concerns, Miss Winters assured them. There would be designated viewing areas where tourists could safely observe the Mustangs in their natural habitat. Designated viewing areas, Catherine repeated incredulously. These are wild animals with established territories and migration patterns. You can't simply redesign their habitat around a resort. Ms. Winters maintained her professional demeanor. We understand your concerns, Dr. Adams, but surely there's room for compromise. The economic benefits to this community would be substantial. At what cost? Chloe spoke up, her young voice clear and confident. The Mustangs need connected territories to thrive. Fragmenting their range would devastate the herd. Ms. Winters gave Chloe an indulgent smile. You must be the famous Chloe. Your experience with the silver mare was truly remarkable. She turned back to the adults. Which is precisely why this resort would be so successful. People are fascinated by your story. They want to experience that connection for themselves. They can't, Chloe said firmly. What happened between me and Silver Wind was unique. You can't package it for tourists. The meeting ended with Catherine promising to review the proposal, though her skepticism was evident. After Ms. Winters departed, the family gathered in the kitchen with Walter to discuss this unexpected development. They're not just going to go away, Walter warned. Rocky Mountain Development has political connections. They've pushed through projects in protected areas before. But we have the conservation agreement with Harrison, Benjamin pointed out, which isn't legally binding yet, Catherine reminded him. The BLM review is still pending. What about the tracking data? Chloe asked. Doesn't that prove how important these migration corridors are? Catherine nodded thoughtfully. It helps, but we need more than scientific data to fight this. We need public support. The documentary, Benjamin suggested. When does it air? Next month, Catherine replied, but we might not have that much time. Walter's phone rang. After a brief conversation, his expression turned grim. That was Lucia. Rocky Mountain Development has already approached the town council. They're holding a special meeting tomorrow night to discuss the proposal. They're moving fast, Benjamin observed. Because they know we'll oppose them, Catherine said. They want to secure town support before we can organize resistance. Chloe, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. We need to talk to Sam Running Bear. The cave where Silver Wind sheltered me, he said it's sacred to his people. Maybe there are legal protections for indigenous cultural sites. The adults exchanged surprised glances. That's, actually a good idea, Walter admitted. Native American cultural and religious sites do have certain protections under federal law. I'll call Sam, Judy said, already reaching for the phone. As the adults mobilized, Chloe slipped outside. The afternoon sun was beginning to lower in the west, casting long shadows across the pastures. She walked to the eastern fence line, her eyes drawn to the distant mountains where Silver Wind and her herd roamed. Her hand found the silver pendant at her neck, its familiar shape comforting against her palm. In Elizabeth Redfeather's journal, she had read about moments like this, times when the old woman had sensed trouble coming and sought guidance from the spirits she believed watched over the land. Chloe didn't know if she believed in spirits, but she did believe in connections. The bond that had formed between her and Silver Wind, the ancient ties between humans and horses depicted in the cave paintings, the generations of people who had protected this land and its wild inhabitants. I won't let them take your home, she whispered to the distant mountains. I promise. Whether it was coincidence or something more mysterious, a sudden breeze stirred the grass around her, carrying the faint scent of pine and wild sage. Chloe smiled, feeling a renewed sense of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them not alone, but connected to something larger and more enduring than herself. Chuniuan. The town hall was packed beyond capacity the following evening. It seemed every resident of Valley Forge had turned out for the special meeting, along with reporters from several regional news outlets. The controversy over Rocky Mountain Development's proposal had spread quickly, dividing the community between those eager for economic opportunities and those concerned about environmental impact. Rebecca Winters presented her company's vision with polished professionalism, architectural renderings of a tasteful resort that would blend harmoniously with the natural landscape, promises of hundreds of jobs for local residents, and projected tax revenues that would fund school improvements and infrastructure projects. Valley Forge has a unique opportunity, she concluded, to preserve its natural heritage while embracing economic growth that will benefit generations to come. Many in the audience applauded, particularly business owners who stood to gain from increased tourism. Mayor Jenkins, clearly impressed by the presentation, thanked Ms. Winters before inviting public comments. Catherine was the first to speak. With methodical precision, she outlined the scientific evidence for preserving intact migration corridors, presenting data from Silverwind's tracking device to illustrate how the proposed development would fragment critical habitats. Scott Harrison followed, surprising many with his passionate defense of the conservation plan. "A year ago, I would have welcomed this development with open arms," he admitted. "But I've come to understand that these Mustangs are more than just wild animals competing for resources. They're part of our heritage, part of what makes this land special." He looked directly at the town council. "There are ways to bring tourism dollars to Valley Forge without sacrificing what makes it worth visiting in the first place." When Sam Running Bear approached the microphone, a respectful hush fell over the room. The tribal elder rarely attended town meetings, and his presence carried significant weight. "My ancestors walked these mountains long before there were towns or ranches." He began, his deep voice resonating through the hall. "They understood something many have forgotten, that we do not own the land. We are merely its caretakers for those who will come after us." He described the cultural and spiritual significance of the cave where Chloe and Silverwind had sheltered. "This is a sacred site to my people, protected under federal law. The proposed resort would encroach upon lands that have religious and cultural importance to the Northern Arapaho." He placed a folder of documentation on the council table. "I have submitted a formal request for protected status under the American Indian Religious Freedom Act." A murmur ran through the crowd. Rebecca Winters whispered urgently with her colleagues. Next came Walter Bishop, presenting the Forest Service's assessment of environmental impacts, followed by a succession of residents voicing opinions on both sides of the issue. Throughout it all, Chloe sat quietly beside her grandmother, watching the proceedings with solemn attention. She had declined her mother's suggestion that she speak, feeling that her story had already been told through others' words. As the meeting stretched into its third hour, Mayor Jenkins called for a short recess. People milled about, discussing the various presentations and arguments. Rebecca Winters approached Catherine, her professional demeanor slightly strained. "Your opposition is more organized than we anticipated," she acknowledged. "But this isn't over. My company has invested considerable resources in this project." "Then perhaps you should have researched the area more thoroughly," Catherine replied evenly, "including its cultural significance and the community's commitment to conservation. Yes, the economic benefits aren't the only consideration," Catherine finished. "This town has found a balance between livelihood and preservation. We won't sacrifice that for short-term gains." As Ms. Winters turned away, visibly frustrated, Chloe approached her mother. "Do you think they'll give up?" "Not easily," Catherine admitted, "but we've made our case strongly tonight." When the meeting reconvened, Mayor Jenkins announced that the council would take all testimony under advisement and schedule a vote for the following month after further study of the legal and environmental implications. "That's a victory," Benjamin whispered to Catherine. They were pushing for an immediate decision. As the crowd dispersed, a local reporter approached Chloe. "You didn't speak tonight," she observed. "Many people were expecting to hear from you." Chloe considered her response carefully. "I think Silverwind has already spoken through her actions, through the way she's living freely with her herd, through the fact that she trusted a human when she had no reason to." She touched her pendant. "Some things don't need more words." The reporter smiled, jotting down the quote. "Wise beyond your years, aren't you?" Chloe shrugged. "I just had a good teacher." Early the next morning, Walter's urgent phone call shattered the peaceful dawn at Judy's ranch. "There's a fire near Boulder Canyon," he reported, his voice tense, "right in the heart of the Mustang territory." Catherine immediately checked the tracking data on her computer. Silverwind's herd was in that area yesterday. "How bad is it?" Benjamin asked. "Still relatively small, but the wind's picking up. We're mobilizing all available firefighting resources." "Do you think it's related to the development dispute?" Catherine's question hung in the air. Walter's hesitation was answer enough. "Let's just say the timing is suspicious. A construction survey team was scheduled to assess that area today, coincidentally outside the boundaries of the land Sam Running Bear is seeking to protect." "They wouldn't deliberately," Benjamin began. "Probably not directly," Walter conceded. but a carelessly discarded cigarette in dry conditions, hard to prove intent. Ewan, what can we do? Chloe asked, having joined the adults during the call. Stay put, Walter instructed. This is a job for professionals. I'll keep you updated. But as the morning progressed, reports grew increasingly concerning. The fire had spread more rapidly than expected, driven by gusting winds and dry conditions. By noon, a thick pall of smoke was visible from Judy's property, hanging ominously over the eastern ridges. Catherine paced anxiously, checking the tracking device data every few minutes. The signal's moving erratically. The herd is on the run, trying to escape the fire. When Harrison's truck pulled into the driveway, Benjamin met him at the door. The rancher's face was grim. It's bad, he reported. Fires jumped the containment line. They're calling in air support, but it'll be at least an hour before the tankers can get here. What about the Mustangs? Chloe asked. Harrison shook his head. No sightings reported yet. The smoke's too thick for visual confirmation. I'm going up there, Catherine decided suddenly. Absolutely not, Benjamin protested. It's too dangerous. I know those canyons better than anyone, Catherine insisted. If the herd is trapped, I might be able to find a way to guide them to safety. Then I'm coming with you, Harrison said. My eastern access road might still be clear. We can get closer than the main response teams. I'm coming too, Walter's voice came from the doorway. He had arrived silently during their discussion. As the Senior Forest Service Ranger, I can authorize our presence in the evacuation zone for wildlife management purposes. Benjamin looked from one determined face to another, recognizing the futility of further protest. Fine, but I'm driving. What about me? Chloe asked, her voice small but resolute. The adults exchanged glances. No, Benjamin said firmly. It's too dangerous, Chloe. You need to stay here with Grandma. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. But Silver Wind needs me. What if she's trapped? What if her foal can't keep up? Catherine knelt before her daughter. Sweetheart, I promise we'll do everything possible to help them, but I need to know you're safe. She touched the silver pendant around Chloe's neck. Keep this close. Remember what Sam said, connections don't require physical presence. Reluctantly, Chloe nodded. Promise you'll call as soon as you know anything. The very second, Catherine assured her. As the rescue party prepared to depart, loading water, first aid supplies, and emergency equipment into Harrison's truck, Chloe stood on the porch with Judy watching with a heavy heart. Her grandmother's arm encircled her shoulders, offering silent support. They'll be all right, Judy murmured. Your mother knows what she's doing. It's not Mom I'm worried about, Chloe replied softly, her eyes fixed on the distant smoke. It's Silver Wind and her baby. They've never faced fire before. The truck pulled away, dust billowing behind it as it sped down the driveway toward the eastern access road. Chloe remained on the porch long after it had disappeared from view, her hand clutching the silver pendant, her thoughts reaching out across the miles to the mare who had saved her life. Somewhere in that smoke-filled wilderness, Silver Wind was running for her life and the lives of her foals. Chloe could only hope that the connection between them, whatever its nature, would be enough to guide the silver mare to safety once again. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Judy tried to distract Chloe with baking projects and board games, but the girl's attention remained fixed on the eastern windows, watching the columns of smoke rise and shift with the changing winds. When the phone finally rang mid-afternoon, Chloe lunged for it before her grandmother could reach it. Mom, did you find them? But it wasn't Catherine. It was Lucia from the ranger station, her voice tight with worry. Chloe, is your grandmother there? I need to speak with her. A cold dread settled in Chloe's stomach as she handed the phone to Judy. She watched her grandmother's face pale as she listened, her knuckles whitening around the receiver. When? Judy asked. How many? A pause. Yes, of course. We'll be right there. She hung up, turning to Chloe with a carefully controlled expression. There's been an accident. A burning tree fell across the trail. Your mother and the others were trying to reach a group of Mustangs trapped in a box canyon. Are they hurt? Chloe's voice trembled. Walter has a broken arm. Your mother and Mr. Harrison are trapped on the wrong side of the fallen tree. The fire is moving in their direction. Judy was already reaching for her car keys. They've established a command post at the eastern trailhead. We're going there now. The drive to the trailhead was tense and silent. Smoke thickened the air as they approached the foothills, reducing visibility and making breathing difficult. Emergency vehicles lined the access road, fire trucks, ambulances, ranger vehicles. Lucia met them as they parked, leading them to a makeshift operations tent where maps were spread across folding tables and radio communications crackled constantly. "What's happening?" Judy demanded. Lucia pointed to a topographical map. "Catherine and Harrison are here in Whispering Canyon. The fire has created a horseshoe around their position. They're attempting to reach this ridgeline, which would take them above the fire line, but the terrain is challenging." "What about Silverwind's herd?" Chloe asked. Last radio contact indicated they had located a group of Mustangs in the same canyon. That's why they went in to try to guide them to an escape route. Walter sat nearby, his arm in a temporary splint face streaked with soot. "I should be out there with them," he said grimly. "You did what you could," Lucia assured him. "If you hadn't held that tree long enough for the others to get clear, we'd have 3 people trapped instead of 2. A fire captain approached, his expression grave. "We're running out of options. The air tankers can't drop retardant with people in the canyon, it would suffocate them. Ground crews can't get through the main fire line. And the winds are shifting, pushing the flames back toward their position." "Haha, there has to be something we can do," Judy insisted. The fire captain shook his head. "We're monitoring their radio communications and providing guidance, but ultimately, they need to find their own way out of that canyon." Chloe stood silently absorbing this information. Her mother was trapped trying to save Silverwind's herd with fire closing in from all sides. The adults continued discussing options, their voices becoming a distant buzz as Chloe's focus turned inward. She closed her eyes, her hand finding the silver pendant. In her mind, she saw the cave where she and Silverwind had sheltered the ancient petroglyphs watching over them. She remembered Sam's words about connections that transcended physical boundaries, about those chosen to bridge worlds. Her eyes snapped open. "I know another way into that canyon." The adults fell silent, turning to stare at her. "What do you mean?" Lucia asked. "The cave," Chloe explained urgently. "The one where Silverwind took me during the blizzard. It's connected to a network of smaller caves and passages. One of them might lead to Whispering Canyon." Walter straightened. The girl might be right. The geological surveys show extensive limestone formations throughout that area. There could be connecting passages. "But no one knows the exact location of this cave," the fire captain pointed out. "I do," Chloe insisted. "I can find it again." "Absolutely not," Judy said firmly. "It's too dangerous. More dangerous than Mom burning to death." Chloe's voice cracked with emotion. "I found my way there once before, with Silverwind's help. I can do it again." Walter exchanged a look with Lucia. "The northern approach to Pine Ridge is still clear of fire. If there is a back way into that canyon, you can't seriously be considering sending a child into a wildfire zone," the fire captain protested. "Not into the fire," Walter clarified, "but to the cave entrance. If we can establish its location, we might be able to send a rescue team through it." Chloe looked pleadingly at her grandmother. "Please, Grandma, I have to try." Judy closed her eyes briefly, conflict evident on her face. When she opened them, resolution had replaced uncertainty. She doesn't go alone, and she doesn't go without proper equipment and communication. Within 20 minutes, a small expedition had been organized. Walter, despite his injured arm, would accompany Chloe along with a firefighter named Rodriguez, who specialized in technical rescue. Lucia would coordinate from the command post. As they prepared to depart, Sam Running Bear arrived at the trailhead, having heard about the fire on the local news. When told of Chloe's plan, he nodded solemnly. "The passages beneath these mountains are as old as time itself," he said. "Our stories speak of warriors who used them to move unseen during times of conflict." He approached Chloe, placing a weathered hand on her shoulder. "Trust what you feel, little one. The bond you share will guide you." Equipped with fire-resistant clothing, emergency supplies, and radio communications, Chloe climbed into the ranger vehicle with Walter and Rodriguez. As they pulled away from the command post, she glanced back at her grandmother, trying to appear more confident than she felt. The northern access road took them around the worst of the smoke, though the acrid scent of burning forest permeated everything. They drove as far as the road allowed, then continued on foot, following game trails that wound through the pine forest. "How much farther?" Rodriguez asked after they had hiked for nearly 30 minutes. Chloe paused, looking around at the familiar yet different landscape. In winter, buried under snow, everything had appeared transformed. Now in spring, with new growth covering the forest floor, landmarks were equally challenging to identify. She closed her eyes, focusing on the feeling that had guided her before that inexplicable connection to Silver Wind. When she opened them again, a certainty had settled over her. "This way," she said, pointing toward a rocky outcropping half hidden by pine trees. Walter and Rodriguez exchanged glances but followed without question as Chloe led them up a steep slope, around boulders, and finally to the mouth of a small cave, partially concealed by undergrowth. "This is it," she breathed, recognizing the entrance despite the changed season. Rodriguez inspected the opening with his flashlight. "It's going to be a tight squeeze for adults, but passable," Walter confirmed. "The question is whether it connects to Whispering Canyon." Chloe was already pulling out her radio. "Lucia, we found the cave. Can you tell my mom to look for cave openings on the western wall of the canyon?" After a moment of static, Catherine's voice came through, distant, strained, but unmistakable. "Yaka, Chloe, is that you? What are you talking about?" "The cave where Silver Wind took me," Chloe explained rapidly. "I think it might connect to where you are. Look for openings in the rock face. We're a little busy trying not to get roasted alive." Harrison's voice cut in. "The fire's less than half a mile away and moving fast." "What about the Mustangs?" Chloe asked. "We found them," Catherine replied. "Silver Wind, Arrow, the new foal, and about 8 others. They're trapped with us. The smoke is disorienting them." Walter took the radio. "Catherine, listen carefully. We believe there may be a network of caves connecting our position to yours. We need you to search the canyon walls for any openings large enough for a person to enter." A long moment of silence followed, broken only by static. Then, "There's something here, an opening about 6 feet tall in the western wall, but it's narrow and we don't know where it leads." "Mark its position," Walter instructed. "We're going to attempt entry from this end." Rodriguez was already unpacking ropes and safety equipment. "I'll take point. The girl stays here with you." "No," Chloe protested. "I need to go. Silver Wind knows me. She might be too frightened to follow strangers." "It's too dangerous," Walter began. "More dangerous than staying out here if the fire changes direction," Chloe challenged. "I know these caves. I've been in them before." Rodriguez looked to Walter, who hesitated before giving a reluctant nod. "She stays between us. Safety line at all times." The cave entrance opened into a narrow passage that descended steeply into darkness. Their headlamps cast jumping shadows across limestone walls marked with the same ancient petroglyphs Chloe remembered. Rodriguez led the way, testing each foothold before proceeding. Chloe followed, connected to both men by safety lines, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The passage twisted and branched, forcing them to make decisions at several junctions. Each time Chloe closed her eyes, trying to sense which way to go, not based on logic or geology, but on the inexplicable pull she felt toward Silver Wind. After what seemed like hours, but was probably less than 45 minutes, they heard something, a distant whinny echoing through the passages. "That's them!" Chloe exclaimed. They quickened their pace, the passage gradually widening until it opened into a larger cavern. At the far end, a shaft of smoky daylight penetrated from above. And there, silhouetted against that light, stood Silver Wind. The mare's ears pricked forward at the sight of them, her stance alert but not fearful. Behind her, partially visible in the dim light, were the shapes of other Mustangs, including Arrow, in a smaller form that must be the new foal. "Silver Wind," Chloe called softly, moving forward. "It's me." The mare nickered in response, a sound of recognition that brought tears to Chloe's eyes. Catherine appeared at the opening above, her face smudged with soot in disbelief. "Chloe, how on earth?" "No time for explanations," Rodriguez interrupted. "The fire's getting closer. We need to move everyone through these caves immediately. The Mustangs won't follow us through that narrow passage," Harrison objected, appearing beside Catherine. "They'll follow Silver Wind," Chloe said with certainty. "And she'll follow me." What followed was a desperate race against time. Catherine and Harrison descended into the cavern using ropes from their emergency packs. The air was growing increasingly thick with smoke that seeped through cracks in the canyon walls. Chloe approached Silver Wind, speaking softly, her hand extended. The mare lowered her head, allowing the girl to touch her face in a gesture of trust that still astonished the watching adults. "We need to go," Chloe told the mare as if the wild animal could understand her words. "Through the caves, like before." She turned toward the passage they had entered through, looking back expectantly. Silverwind hesitated, glancing at her herd, then at the smoke filtering into the cavern. Making a decision, she stepped forward, following Chloe toward the narrow opening. "It's working," Catherine whispered in amazement. One by one, the other Mustangs followed Silverwind's lead, their instinctive fear of enclosed spaces overcome by their trust in the mare and their stronger fear of the approaching fire. Arrow stayed close to his mother while the new foal, its spindly legs trembling, kept pace between them. The journey back through the cave system was tense and difficult. The passages were barely wide enough for the adult horses, requiring careful navigation. Rodriguez led the way with Chloe immediately behind him, then Silverwind and her herd with Catherine, Harrison, and Walter bringing up the rear. "The smoke's getting thicker," Harrison warned at one point. "Fire must be directly over us now." "Keep moving," Walter urged. "We're more than halfway there." When they finally emerged from the cave entrance into the forest, the sun was low on the horizon, its light diffused through a haze of smoke that hung in the air like a malevolent fog. But they were on the northern side of the ridge, away from the main fire front. Silverwind led her herd immediately into the open, the Mustangs shaking their heads and snorting as they escaped the confining passages. The foal stayed pressed against its mother's side, wide eyes reflecting the distant glow of flames visible through the trees. "We need to keep moving north," Walter instructed. "The fire could still change direction." As they began the trek back toward the access road, Chloe fell in beside Silverwind, her hand occasionally brushing the mare's shoulder. There was no need for a lead rope or halter. The wild horse chose to walk beside the girl, maintaining the connection that had saved both their lives. "I still can't believe it," Catherine said, watching her daughter in the silver mare. "How did you know those caves connected to the canyon?" "I didn't know for sure," Chloe admitted. "I just felt it, the same way I felt Silverwind would help me during the blizzard." Harrison shook his head in wonder. "Instinct's a powerful thing in humans and in horses." He glanced at the mare. "She recognized the danger and trusted you to lead her to safety, just as you trusted her in the storm." By the time they reached the access road where Lucia waited with emergency vehicles, the full impact of what had happened began to sink in. Not only had they rescued Catherine and Harrison from the fire, but they had saved a significant portion of the Mustang herd, including Silverwind and her foals. News crews had gathered at the command post, cameras rolling as the extraordinary procession emerged from the forest, first the humans, then to the astonishment of all watching the wild Mustangs, led by a silver mare walking freely beside a young girl. "It's her," someone whispered, "the miracle girl and her Mustang." Judy rushed forward, enveloping Chloe in a fierce embrace. "Don't you ever scare me like that again," she scolded through tears of relief. "I had to go, Grandma," Chloe said simply. "They needed me." Over her grandmother's shoulder, Chloe saw Silverwind watching them, the mare's intelligent eyes reflecting the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles. For a moment they held each other's gaze, wild and tame animal and human, yet connected by something that transcended those categories. Then with a soft nicker that seemed meant only for Chloe, Silverwind turned and led her herd toward the northern grasslands, away from the fire, away from the humans, back to the freedom that was their birthright. "Will they be okay?" Chloe asked her mother, watching the Mustangs disappear into the gathering dusk. Catherine nodded, her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Thanks to you, they have a fighting chance. The northern range is safe from the fire, and the tracking device will help us monitor their movements." She kissed the top of Chloe's head. "You saved them, sweetheart, just as Silverwind once saved you." As they drove back to Judy's ranch, exhausted but triumphant, news of their remarkable rescue spread rapidly through television and social media. By morning, the story of how a young girl had led wild Mustangs through ancient caves to escape a forest fire would reach millions, adding another chapter to the legend of Chloe and Silverwind. But for Chloe, nestled between her mother and grandmother in the back of a ranger vehicle, the true miracle wasn't the dramatic rescue or the media attention that would follow. It was the moment Silverwind had appeared in that smoke-filled cavern, recognizing her, trusting her, choosing once again to follow where she led. Some connections, she realized, touching the silver pendant at her neck, were beyond explanation, beyond science, beyond logic, beyond the boundaries humans created to make sense of the world. Some connections simply were as ancient and enduring as the mountains themselves, as the wild horses that roamed them, as the bond between a silver mare and the girl whose life she had saved. 1 year later, Valley Forge welcomed visitors from across the country for the inaugural Wild Horse Conservation Summit. The small mountain town had transformed in unexpected ways, embracing its new identity as a model for coexistence between ranching interests and wildlife preservation. The community center buzzed with activity as Catherine prepared for her keynote address. In large photographs lined the walls, Mustangs in their natural habitat, Silver Wind with her growing foal, now a sturdy yearling that locals had nicknamed Nova for the star on her forehead, and the remarkable cave rescue that had made international headlines. "Nervous?" Benjamin asked, adjusting his tie as he joined his wife. Catherine shook her head. "Excited. The Bureau of Land Management is sending their deputy director. This could mean federal recognition for our protection model." "Who would have thought a blizzard would lead to all this?" Benjamin mused, surveying the crowded room. Among the attendees were conservation experts, ranchers from neighboring counties interested in implementing similar land-sharing programs, and wildlife photographers drawn by the famous Silver Wind story. The National Geographic documentary had aired 3 months earlier to critical acclaim, bringing national attention to the Pine Ridge Mustangs. Chloe, now 10, moved confidently through the crowd in her role as junior ambassador for the conservation program. The past year had shaped her in remarkable ways. She'd spoken to school groups across the state-led educational tours at the ranch, and even testified before the state legislature about Mustang protection. "There she is," Judy said proudly, watching her granddaughter explain a migration map to an elderly couple. "Hard to believe she was that scared little girl lost in the storm." Walter Bishop nodded. "Some experiences change a person, define them, or reveal who they already were." At the podium, the mayor of Valley Forge welcomed the assembled guests before introducing Catherine. As she took the stage, screens behind her displayed footage of the Mustang herd moving freely through protected corridors that had been officially designated 6 months earlier. "A year ago," Catherine began, "many of us viewed the wild Mustangs of Pine Ridge as either a nuisance to be removed or a resource to be managed. Today we understand them as essential members of our ecosystem and living symbols of our natural heritage." She outlined the progress made, the establishment of protected migration corridors, the rotation system for shared grazing land, the decline in conflicts between ranchers and wild horses. Data collected from Silver Wind's tracking device had proven instrumental in designing these solutions. But numbers and policies don't tell the whole story. Catherine continued, her expression softening. "Sometimes it takes a personal connection to change hearts and minds. My daughter Chloe found that connection in the most desperate circumstances, and it transformed not just her life, but our entire community." The audience applauded as Chloe joined her mother on stage. Though she had told her story many times, she still spoke with genuine emotion about those hours in the blizzard and the silver mare who had saved her life. "Silver Wind didn't just help me survive," Chloe concluded. "She taught all of us that the line between wild and tame isn't as clear as we think, that intelligence, compassion, and connection can exist across species." After the presentations, attendees broke into working groups focused on specific aspects of conservation and land management. Scott Harrison led the ranchers' discussion, his complete transformation from opponent to advocate still surprising those who had known him before. "It's simple economics," he'd explained to a skeptical cattle rancher from Wyoming. "The tourist interest in viewing the Mustangs has boosted our local economy more than expanded grazing ever would have. My guest ranch is booked solid through next year, with people hoping to spot Silver Wind's herd." Outside the community center, Chloe found a quiet moment with her parents and grandmother. The day had been long but rewarding, filled with promising developments for the future of the program. "The BLM representative wants to use our model for 3 other wild horse territories," Catherine shared excitedly. "This could affect protection policies across the West." "All because of one silver mare," Judy mused. "And one brave girl," Benjamin added, squeezing Chloe's shoulder. As they stood together, Travis Fletcher approached, his expression unusually animated. Dr. Adams, you might want to see this. The motion sensor cameras on Eagle Ridge captured something this morning. He handed Catherine his tablet. The footage showed a familiar silver mare standing at the exact spot where Chloe had been found during the rescue. Silver Wind appeared to be looking directly at the camera, almost posing before her yearling colt Arrow and the younger foal Nova joined her in the frame. It's the anniversary, Chloe realized. 1 year exactly since the rescue. Coincidence? Benjamin suggested, though his tone held uncertainty. Catherine studied the footage with professional interest. The location is significant. That exact ridge is where the search team spotted you two together. And the timing? She remembers, Chloe said simply with the unwavering certainty that had become her hallmark when discussing Silver Wind. She knows what day it is. Rather than dismiss her daughter's interpretation, Catherine merely smiled. The past year had taught her to remain open to possibilities beyond scientific explanation. The monthly monitoring flight is scheduled for tomorrow, Travis mentioned. We were planning to check on the herd's spring migration pattern anyway. I'd like to go, Chloe said immediately. Catherine hesitated. It's just a data collection flight, sweetheart. You'd be observing from quite a distance. That's okay. I just want to see them. To see her. The next morning, a small observation helicopter lifted off from the Valley Forge Municipal Airfield. Inside were the pilot Catherine Walter to manage the monitoring equipment, and Chloe securely harnessed and wearing hearing protection against the rotor noise. Last tracking data placed the herd in the Northern Valley, Walter said through the intercom. We'll do a wide sweep to avoid disturbing them. The landscape below transformed as they rose above the town-dense forest, giving way to meadow streams cutting silver ribbons through green valleys. Spring had brought new life to Pine Ridge, carpeting the land in wildflowers and fresh growth. There, Catherine pointed, by the eastern creek. The pilot banked gently, maintaining altitude as they approached. Below, barely visible at first and then unmistakable, the Mustang herd grazed peacefully. Through binoculars, Catherine counted. 22 now, she noted. Up from 17 last year. The protected status is working. Chloe scanned the herd, searching for the distinctive silver coat. I don't see Silver Wind or Nova. Walter adjusted the monitoring equipment. Tracking signal is strong. She should be with the main group. The pilot circled wider, giving them a different perspective. Suddenly, Catherine gasped. Look at the ridgeline. Standing apart from the herd, silhouetted against the morning sky, was Silver Wind. Beside her were Arrow, now a handsome 2-year-old, and Nova, her coat shimmering with the same silver quality as her mother's. They stood perfectly still, as if posing for the observers above. Can we get a little closer? Chloe asked. Just to see them better. The pilot looked to Walter, who nodded. One pass, maintaining minimum altitude. As they approached, something remarkable happened. Silver Wind raised her head, looking directly at the helicopter. Then, as if making a decision, she reared briefly on her hind legs, a powerful, deliberate movement, visible even from their height. She's acknowledging us, Chloe whispered, though only her mother could hear through the intercom. Or warning us off, Walter suggested practically. No, Catherine said, her scientific skepticism momentarily suspended. Chloe's right. She's acknowledging us, acknowledging her. The moment stretched a connection across species and distance that defied easy explanation. Then Silver Wind dropped back to all fours, tossed her silver mane, and led her offspring back toward the main herd, wild and free, yet somehow conscious of the human observers who had become unexpected allies. As the helicopter turned back toward Valley Forge, Chloe remained silent, absorbing what she had witnessed. The silver horse pendant at her neck caught the sunlight, a tangible reminder of the bond that continued despite separation. What are you thinking? Catherine asked. That some connections never really break. Chloe replied, even when you're apart. In the years to come, Chloe would return many times to Pine Ridge, first as a child fascinated by wild horses, then as a teenager volunteering with conservation programs, eventually as a young woman studying wildlife biology like her mother. Through it all, the silver pendant remained at her neck, and the bond with a certain silver mare remained in her heart. Silver Wind would live out her life as she was meant to, wild and free in the mountains and valleys that were her birthright. Her descendants would roam those same protected lands, carrying her legacy of unusual intelligence and unexpected connection with humans. And on certain days when the light was just right and the wind carried the scent of pine and sage across the valleys, observers might glimpse a silver mare standing on a distant ridge watching. Not with fear, but with awareness, a recognition of the complex relationship between wild and tame, between freedom and protection, between human and horse. A connection formed in the heart of a blizzard, tempered in the crucible of a forest fire, and preserved through understanding and respect enduring as the mountains themselves. The helicopter banks away, leaving Silverwind and her family to the freedom of the mountains. Below, the protected corridors stretch like veins across the land, a promise kept between species who once viewed each other only as threats. Years will pass. Chloe will grow the silver pendant always close to her heart. Silverwind will age her coat, fading from silver to white, her legacy continuing through Nova in generations yet unborn. The bond between them will neither strengthen nor weaken it, simply is as permanent as the mountains themselves. Perhaps somewhere in our distant past, humans and horses first looked at each other not as predator and prey, but as companions on life's uncertain journey. Perhaps in that ancient cave with its weathered petroglyphs, we glimpse a time when the boundaries between wild and tame were not so rigidly drawn. In a world that moves ever faster, that builds walls between what is natural and what is human, stories like this remind us to pause, to listen, to recognize the intelligence and awareness in eyes not our own. What other connections wait to be rediscovered? What ancient bonds might still be awakened in moments of greatest need? The wilderness keeps its secrets, but sometimes, if we're very lucky, it shares them with those willing to believe.